Weather warnings are in place across northern England, southern Scotland and Wales. That weather front is currently across Northern Ireland and Scotland as we go through Tuesday evening into Wednesday, gradually sinking its way southwards. A lot of cloud in the sky, winds in from the southwest and very mild for the time of year. These are your overnight temperatures into Wednesday, more typical of what we would see through the daytime at this stage in October. So through Wednesday morning then, it's southern Scotland, northern England that sees the brunt of the rain. Will be quite persistent, I think, through the day here, and that just allows those totals to build up, so the risk of some difficult travelling conditions. A lot of cloud elsewhere, a few breaks in that cloud to the east of the Pennines, across southeast England as well. Some brighter skies later across the northwest with 1 or 2 showers, but highs of 18 degrees, very mild for this stage of October. As we go through Wednesday evening then, that rain gradually sinks into Wales and pushes its way a little bit further south with some very strong winds on that. We could see gusts of 30 to 40 miles an hour at times. Another rain warning then comes into force for Wales through Thursday as we see that rain starting to become more persistent here. Still very, very mild though across the bulk of the country. A little bit cooler across the northwest of Scotland as we see that cooler, fresher air starting to push its way in here. But as we go through Thursday, more of the same for western areas. Do take care if you are travelling because there will be some difficult driving conditions out there. We're expecting that rain to persist through much of the day. Elsewhere, some brighter skies. And as we go through Friday and into the Halloween weekend, it stays unsettled and turns just that little bit cooler. Take care for now. Bye-bye.
You're watching Tonight Live. It's Mark Dolan in for Dan Wootton for the next 2 weeks. We've got a busy show. Our very own Nigel Farage joins us. US media superstar Megyn Kelly and model, author and ex-wife of football legend George Best, Alex Best, joins me live in the studio. As ever, I'm joined by our fabulous panel. Former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler. And in the clash, should we have a referendum on Boris's eco plans? We'll discuss all of that after the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Thank you. Your latest GB News headlines this hour. The Queen has cancelled attending a major reception for world leaders at the COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow next week. Buckingham Palace has said the 95-year-old monarch has followed the advice of doctors to rest and regretfully decided not to travel to the event. It comes after the head of state carried out her first official engagement since her overnight stay in hospital last week. She appeared on a screen via video link from Windsor Castle today during a virtual audience with the ambassador from the Republic of Korea. Earlier, royal commentator Angela Levin told GB News her thoughts on the Queen's condition.
She's going to do something virtually. She's going to make a speech virtually, which she's tremendously good at, and I'll have everybody watching because she always does. But I think it's an issue that if you are quite old, that you can't bounce back. She might feel much better, but I think people with older bodies take much longer to recover. It's very annoying, I think.
Millions of public sector workers will get a pay rise next year, including teachers, nurses and police officers. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, will announce the change for workers across the country in tomorrow's budget. It comes after he paused public sector pay increases after heavy borrowing during the pandemic. The funeral of the Conservative MP, Sir David Amess, will be held at Westminster Cathedral next month. Cardinal Vincent Nichols, the leader of Roman Catholics in England and Wales, will preside over the ceremony on November the 23rd. The Southend West MP was stabbed to death early this month, meeting constituents in a church in Leigh-on-Sea in Essex. Sussex police say they're investigating 7 cases of women being injected or spiked on nights out. The reports have all come from Brighton and Eastbourne during the last week. Detectives have said they want to assure members of the public and will increase their patrols in the affected areas. The United Nations has warned the world is on track for climate catastrophe and that plans to cut emissions still fall far short of what's needed. The organisation's environment programme said even with plans and pledges from countries to cut greenhouse gas emissions in the next decade, the world still faces global warming of 2.7 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. SpaceX has had a leak, but not of the confidential information kind. Instead, the company has revealed issues with toilet plumbing on board some of its capsules. Not to put too fine a point on it, at the launch of the company's first private flight last month, a toilet tube in the rocket became unglued, spraying unfortunate onlookers with its contents. SpaceX and NASA are now tackling their toilet troubles ahead of the new launch on Sunday. You're right up to date. I'm back in an hour.
It's Tuesday, October the 26th. You're watching Tonight Live with me, Mark Dolan, in for Dan Wootton. Another action-packed show for you this evening. In the clash, should we have a referendum on net zero? Conservative MP Michael Fabricant, broadcaster and director at car26.org, Lois Perry, and policy lead at the Institution of Environmental Sciences, Joseph Lewis. They'll all be joining me to debate that topic. I'll be joined by US media superstar Megyn Kelly, who will give us the lowdown on the big stories stateside. And do we put too much pressure on politicians and their partners? GB News' very own Nigel Farage will be discussing that and a bit of Brexit as well in What the Farage just after 10. And are millennial creatives using identity politics to rise up the corporate ladder? Author and commentator Frank Furedi joins me to discuss woke power plays at Netflix and other corporations. That's Uncancelled at 11. As always, before the end of the show, we will reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass, well worth staying up for. And in tonight's big question, ex-wife of the late great George Best, Alex Best, will be joining us live in the studio to answer your questions. So now is a great time to get in touch. You can email me, mark@gbnews.uk. Tweet us using the handle @GBNews or Facebook your question by searching for GB News. Plus, we've got my amazing panel tonight. We've pushed the boat out and yes, we've splashed the cash. Dawn Neeson, basically. That's right, reacting to the big stories of the day and looking at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. The Worth Every Penny Daily Star editor, formerly, Dawn Neeson. There she is. Commentator and broadcaster, and of course, of this parish, Calvin Robinson, and journalist, broadcaster and writer, Sam Dowler. Now, my priority is to get your opinions on the national television airwaves. You know I love it when you drop me an email, so get in contact now and throughout the show. It's my own personal email. It comes straight to my laptop, mark@gbnews.uk. A big 3 hours to come. Let's get to work. Posh actress Joanna Lumley has said that we should consider rationing, similar to that seen during the Second World War, to tackle climate change. Here's what she had to say. "That was how the war was," she says. "Stuff was rationed, and at some stage I think we might have to go back to some kind of system of rationing, where you're given a certain number of points and it's up to you how to spend them, whether it's buying a bottle of whiskey or flying in an aeroplane." God, I need a bottle of whiskey after hearing that rubbish. First of all, this is woefully impractical. How does weighing out bags of sugar, distributing vouchers for travel, and allocating households 11 minutes of central heating a day actually save the planet, especially when China, Brazil, India, and the United States continue to guzzle energy for fun? What she's proposing places an enormous amount of power in the hands of the state. It destroys the individual and removes any sense of self-determination. It's communism pure and simple, from someone who has enjoyed decades of the fruits of capitalism from her successful film and TV career. Too many people have used the coronavirus pandemic to usher in socialism. The furlough scheme was effectively Karl Marx's wet dream, paying people to stay at home. And brutal state control has been the consequence of COVID measures. What's currently happening in Australia and New Zealand is the stuff of nightmares. The fight we've got on our hands, and one I'll be fighting every day on this television network, is to get all of that control lifted and place power back in the hands of you, the British people. But no sooner have we reached what is hopefully the tail end of the pandemic, that there are now forces out there that hope to transfer all of the instruments of control from COVID and move it to climate. And all of this is a bit rich, coming from Joanna Lumley, a woman who has, in recent years, fronted multiple globe-trotting TV shows in which she's basically paid to go on holiday and sip champagne on a 747, visiting Japan, India and the Nile, all at the same time that she wags her fingers at the rest of us for wanting a hard-earned summer holiday abroad. This is a classic example of the metropolitan elite at work, with one rule for them and another for the rest of us. Whether it's COVID measures or now tackling climate issues, these are two sides of the same coin. Everything is about destroying the economy, controlling people's lives, and telling you what to do. Let's not have a wealthy, famous actress, a vegan Swedish teenager, or anyone else for that matter, to tell us what car to drive, what temperature our homes should be, and what goes onto our dinner plate. The only thing we should be rationing is this scientifically debatable nonsense. Change the script, Joanna, because your latest role as eco-warrior is far from absolutely fabulous. Novara Media is a left-leaning political channel which for a few hours today was removed by YouTube for supposed offences based around their content. YouTube said that they sometimes make the wrong call when reviewing flagged content, but Novara Media were having none of it and are demanding a step-by-step explanation. This is a timely reminder to the frankly woke voices at Novara Media and elsewhere that if you support cancel culture, which many on the left say doesn't exist, it will eventually cancel you. We've been here before. My old employer, Talk Radio, was removed from YouTube, and of course, countless highly respected individuals and organisations have been suspended from or permanently removed from Twitter, YouTube and beyond, including former President Donald Trump. Now, I don't agree with Novara Media and lots of what they say. They propagate bonkers economic and social policies that, in my view, would destroy the country. But last time I checked, we have free speech and we live in a democracy. And I therefore defend their right to have a platform and be on air. We need more people to disagree with each other, not fewer. More argument and debate, not less. We have forgotten, haven't we, how to do discourse in this country, with people trapped in echo chambers, agreeing with each other and considering those with a different view to be the enemy. Removing voices like Novara Media, and anyone else for that matter, will just deepen the crisis and foment more division. Fleet Street is a great template. I'm a huge fan of our press in this country. When I give you the newspaper front pages later in today's show, I'll be quoting from the left-leaning Mirror, Guardian and Independent, and the right-leaning Mail, Times and Telegraph. And long may that continue. We need a diversity of views, and we need to be exposed to opinions that we don't share. Even the Bieber at it. Here is a tweet from a new employee at the organisation. Take a look at this. Not a big klaxon person, says Rachel Schreier, but I start today as the BBC's first specialist health disinformation reporter. I'm privileged to take on this important brief at a time where bad information is playing such a big role in people's health and well-being. Wow. Who decides what is health disinformation and what in God's name is bad information when it's at home? George Orwell, eat your heart out. 2021? More like 1984. And we cannot have perfectly reasonable debate shut down by these tech giants, whatever the opinions being espoused. Who can blame Donald Trump for creating a new social media platform? The boundaries of free speech in this country should not be decided by a Californian billionaire in a hoodie. These politically biased conglomerates with their own agenda have no right to cancel voices that don't fit their prescribed narrative. Frankly, they've got too much power, and we should cancel them. News just in. Masks are now mandatory for everyone on the parliamentary estate, except, wait for it, MPs. There's a surprise. When is this COVID theatre going to end? Masks that have been woefully discredited by top experts on this very show, those pathetic Perspex screens in shops which have since been accused of making things worse by trapping the aerosols which carry COVID. COVID passports, we read today, may increase the spread of the virus, with more people gathering at home instead of going out. And what about endless hand sanitising, which again appears not to significantly stop the spread? There's no end to this. Arrows in supermarkets, a one-in, one-out policy in cafes, you name it. It's all got to go, in my opinion. And like MPs, we should all have the freedom as to when and where we wear a mask. And given the social exclusion that masks create, the possible health impacts, their impact on the economy, and of course the environmental catastrophe that they bring, I'd like to see the back of them all together. I actually think it's good that MPs aren't wearing masks because it's far easier for us to see that they're laughing at us. This is GB News. That's my view, but do you disagree? Mark at gbnews.uk, delighted to welcome my panel for the evening. Former editor of the Daily Star, woman's own columnist, broadcaster and all-round entertainer, Dawn Neeson. Conservative commentator and broadcaster, GB News' very own Calvin Robinson. And a very old friend of mine, great to have him back on the sofa, journalist and presenter Sam Dowler. Sam, can I start with you? Can we talk about the issue about these tech giants deciding what the right opinions are?
I think, actually, you use the example of Donald Trump, for example, he is purporting a big lie right now, and we know it's a lie. It has never been proven that it is.
What's the lie?
Oh, that he won the election, which we know isn't true.
He's entitled to contend.
You can have an opinion.
The election was stolen,
but going on social media and saying all the time that it was a lie, I won, etc., is
Well, I didn't count the votes.
But that's disinformation.
I wasn't there.
There are allegations, but the Americans
which I think
the
should be investigated.
But they have been investigated. Time and time again, it was found that he did lose.
By a bunch of lefty judges.
Even by his own party, they did an audit, I believe, in Arizona, and they weren't even allowed to do it. They did it anyway, and they still found that Biden won. So he is lying on social media. That's why he was taken off of it. So I don't think you should be.
That's not why he was taken off of it.
Well, it was due to his misinformation and also obviously
they said he was inciting violence.
And also inciting violence,
which was incorrect.
He was. No, he was.
I don't think he was inciting violence, but the problem is
not like literally verbatim.
Are you saying these companies should have the power to take down a sitting president of the United States of America?
Absolutely,
really?
if they're lying completely.
Meanwhile, representatives of the murderous Taliban remain on Twitter.
Quite.
And this is the problem, Sam, because I understand where you're coming from, but the issue you've got is that it's going to be a 20-something in Palo Alto in California sipping a latte, probably a soya latte, deciding what is free speech.
They have hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, they've got
of people
hundreds of 20.
Who are they accountable to?
Who are they accountable to? The world.
In what way?
You can't.
I disagree with them. How can I hold them to account?
You can't lie and then expect to get away with it.
Who's to say it's a lie?
Because it's been, for example, with the big lie, it's been proven that it was a lie.
But who's to say it is my point. Who holds these fact checkers to account? They're not elected.
Literally, there was.
Why do they have that much power?
Maybe 60 lawsuits were brought, and they were all found to be untrue. All of them. So therefore, it's a lie. It's been proven.
Here's the point, Sam. If you're right that former President Trump was, tweeted erroneously, what about the other examples where people have been cancelled or deplatformed only for YouTube to admit they made a mistake? And that's the issue. It's too much power in their hands.
Plus, it's not illegal to tell a lie. The fact of the matter is that these big companies, they own the keys to the marketplace of ideas. It's not just a private company
Very good
anymore.
point. If you were going to police lies, you would close the House of Commons, wouldn't you, Dawn?
I would have closed it a long time ago. They weren't going
Not a bad shout,
to be
is
honest
it?
with you, yeah. But I mean, it's like, it's like I am being dictated what I can say and what I can't say and what I can think by a group of teenagers, as you said, sitting in California drinking soya lattes. I mean, I was put in Twitter jail for tweeting about being a woman, that cervix business. And I was put in Twitter jail, and yet someone who threatened to sexually assault me because of my talking about being a woman was fine.
No, they should. But I completely agree with having to have your email and your and who you are on all social media, because
So no right to anonymity.
Well, yes, absolutely none. I mean, I have my face and my name on Twitter, and I was
I do
attacked
as
for the
well.
opposite of what you were saying just now.
I do think it's ridiculous that people like Trump are censored, and yet you've got the Taliban who are literally killing women as we speak.
But they're not breaking the terms and conditions of Twitter. This is the problem. If it is legal to say in real life, it should be legal to say it online.
But do we know what they're saying, though, that's a lie? The Taliban, for example.
But I'm saying you shouldn't be banned off social networks for
Well,
saying a lie. Telling a lie is the problem. It's a matter of values.
The new woke Taliban, they're very inclusive.
Taliban 2.0.
Well, they're saying one thing and then doing another, but then,
Correct.
Until...
Just a bit of light stoning the occasional woman doesn't really matter.
I know. But burning a gay man with tea.
Point, Sam, you're making a manful defence of YouTube's position, but isn't the issue that everyone should have a platform and they shouldn't pick and choose what they think is appropriate?
Well, it's like with the pandemic, all of those, those documentaries which weren't true.
Why can't those documentaries exist? People watch them.
Because all they do is they whip people up into a frenzy and they divide society and make it worse.
My amazing viewers can't be trusted to watch such dangerous material.
Well, some people can't.
They're so thick. My viewers are so thick. They might just believe every word of it.
I think probably some of them are. I have family members who have believed it and say, like, open your eyes, Sam, look at the truth. And it's like, oh, come on,
when you take it offline, you convince these
true.
people that it is true. You convince them it's a conspiracy. But the problem is, who dictates what's true and what's not true? At the beginning of this pandemic, you could not post on Facebook that this virus could have leaked from a lab in Wuhan. You could not.
What about 5G?
That was because that was classed.
5G? Was that true?
One point at a time, that was classed as Facebook as disinformation. Therefore, you're banned from saying that on that platform. Now we know it's the most probable cause of the virus.
I don't think it's perfect in any way,
So now we know
shape,
it's
or
possibly true. My point is, if you put these people in charge of what's true and what's not true, who holds them to account? We don't elect them. Therefore, they should not deserve that amount of power.
Okay. I mean, I do agree that obviously Facebook is, is a sieve of problems. I mean, all over the shop. But, however, I think... the policing, etc., of the truth, I agree with you. But when it is, cut and dried, like with 5G, for example, like people, if you say to someone, "Oh, 5G is causing COVID," and then people are up the polls, smashing the polls, I mean, that's because they've read it online and they're like, "Oh, that must be true."
But it's not.
There's always been misinformation, Calvin, but the point is that the human enlightenment is based upon the battle of ideas, the competition of ideas, and the strongest ideas, and those ideas with veracity, always win.
If you think an idea is stupid, prove it wrong. If it's that stupid, it should be easy to prove.
But a lie spreads quicker than the truth. We all know that.
And when you stifle speech, it spreads even further.
And you should be able to debate it.
Indeed.
I agree with you.
There's nothing wrong.
Just pepper all everything with lies and say nobody knows what's the damn.
But this isn't about lies or not. Novara Media
Hating Boris Johnson.
they weren't taken down for lying. Why were they taken down? It's politics.
Who are you talking about?
Novara Media.
Oh, right.
Their entire
that was,
YouTube
well, that
account was
obviously,
taken down.
as you said, that was a mistake. I don't know what Navarro said. Do we know what Navarro said?
That's actually an ongoing investigation, and that's something that Novara Media are strongly defending, is the idea that this is more than just a mistake by YouTube, and they do want an investigation. I don't agree with Sam, but that's the point of this show. What do you think? Mark at gbnews.uk. No one gets cancelled on this show. Coming up, US media superstar Megyn Kelly is she's going to be talking about the Wuhan lab leak. That's right. And also very concerned parents in America based around disinformation happening in schools. Schools going woke in America. Should you homeschool them instead? But instead, next in the clash, should we have a referendum on net zero? We'll get to that after this. On free speech, Sean says, Mark, for centuries, it was accepted scientific fact that the Earth was flat, and anyone claiming otherwise was a heretic. Just saying. But Mark says, Mark, I agree with Joanna Lumley about rationing supplies to save the planet. In the interest of fairness, everyone should be given a carbon budget to use as they wish. No one person should be allowed to pollute more than another in the midst of a climate emergency. Well, Mark, thank you so much for balancing that debate. Let's get on now to the clash, in which we tackle a major topic of the day from opposing points of view. As the Prime Minister prepares for the COP26 summit in Glasgow and pursues an ambitious green agenda, who actually voted for these measures? Did you? It begs the question, should there be a referendum on Boris's net zero targets? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome Lois Perry, Director of Net Zero Referendum Campaign Group car26.org, An old friend of mine. We've actually made a movie together. Conservative MP Michael Fabricant and Joseph Lewis, policy lead at the Institution of Environmental Sciences. Joseph, can we start with you? Do you think there should be a referendum on net zero?
Well, we are the Institution of Environmental Sciences, not political sciences. You'll leave the political question on exactly what measures are the best way to talk to the public, perhaps to Michael and Lois. But what I will say is this. I do think it's quite sad that the only way our country knows to have a conversation these days is with a yes or no X on a piece of paper. And I do think there are maybe better ways we can have that conversation, really include people's voices, so that we're actually hearing what they have to say.
But isn't the X on the piece of paper democracy?
Well, the X on the piece of paper is some representation of democracy, but I don't think, Mark, that people really want to hear the question of if we should be doing things. I think there's a clear consensus on that. I think what people want to do is talk about how we do those things. And as soon as we move past if to how, as soon as we move past yes or no to talking about the way this is actually going to look, we can resolve all of those concerns, those real concerns that people have about the ways in which we do it and whether measures are right or not. And I think I'll take your viewers back to what you said just over a week ago when you were talking about Her Majesty the Queen, when you said, less talk, more action. And I think very much what we need right now is more action, more good action.
Michael, congratulations on increasing your majority at the last election.
I'd like to make it bigger and bigger each time.
It's ever expanding.
Yes.
You're known for that, Michael.
Thank you.
But would voters have supported you so vociferously if they'd known they were signing up for an expensive green agenda, an electric car, a heat pump boiler, which is going to cost, a fortune and may not work properly? Would voters have really signed up for that?
And could you even get it in your basement? I mean, it depends on the type of heat pump it is, but ground heat pumps are absolutely huge and you need a big basement or a big room to put it in. But would I go for a referendum? No. And let me tell you why. Because the whole thing is not... First of all, I think we should only use referenda or referendums for big constitutional issues, and this isn't a constitutional matter. And we're not a nation that does referendums. The second thing is, when we had Brexit, and I was a Brexiteer before Brexit, the word...
You backed the right horse, didn't you?
Well, I was backing that horse when I first became an MP years ago.
Well, I know. I think in your business career, you got fed up with the EU because it was much harder to trade with the
That's right. I used to
on the UK.
Yeah, I used to set up radio and TV stations, as you know, Mark, and I found it a lot easier doing business in the US and Canada and Australia and even places like Uganda because it was all based on English law. And we understood each other. The Napoleonic law system in Europe is incredibly archaic. It doesn't move. It's not common law. And we're seeing the consequences now where Europe is languishing economically while the United Kingdom and the United States and Canada and other countries are forging ahead. I always used to say, I know we're going back onto Brexit now, but hey, I always used to say that European Union is like a ball and chain on the leg of the British economy. And now we've cut it off, we could actually we've
attached, haven't we, a new chain to our other leg, and that is net zero.
Absolutely. I completely agree
on that. It's going to cost
that.
billions.
It is.
And the public haven't been asked about this.
They haven't been asked about it. And my organisation, car26.org, we did a YouGov poll today, and 58% of those who expressed an opinion of British public, and that was across the spectrum, said that they supported a referendum on net zero carbon policy. So I'm going to be calling for that. And there's a petition on my website, car26.org,
but
which
Lois,
everyone can sign.
What do they vote on?
You support referendums because of Brexit.
No. Well, I was going to say, for constitutional things and where it's ones and noughts. What do I mean by that? Are you pregnant or you're not pregnant? Not you, of course.
I hope not.
Are we in Europe? Are we out of Europe? But,
we need the debate, don't we?
But
there is no debate. This is a climate non-debate.
Yeah, but as Joseph was saying, it's all a question of what we do, how much we do of it.
Well, then let's talk about it. Let's let the British public look at all the facts and figures. Let's find out what it's going to cost.
Michael, borrowing enormous amounts of money, which is what the green agenda will involve.
Absolutely.
Asking people to, get rid of their car and fork out a fortune on an electric vehicle.
Only the rich.
These are not conservative policies.
No,
this is socialism.
Yes.
Well, that's an interesting point. I would simply say, you know, is there a settled view that we do need to save the planet? And the question is, what do we do? We're not actually saying to anyone, you've got to get rid of your car now. And anyway, we were just talking about it outside. I mean, there is so much good work being done in Israel and the University of Pennsylvania and other places on new battery design for cars. Because, quite frankly, you know...
They're very heavy and clunky, and the minerals that are mined to make them, kids are in the Congo, they're being used, it's slavery.
And the Chinese are ripping up the coral reefs, you know, to try
They're ripping Africa up.
Yeah, to get the lithium and other products. So, you know, you've got to look at this in a balanced way. And, of course, yes, electric cars are clean when they're used in the UK, except... where are they getting the electricity from?
I couldn't agree more.
Well, you raise a good point, but Joseph, I mean, the bottom line is that Michael says it's not a constitutional matter, but if you're signing up for hundreds of billions of pounds worth of borrowing, I mean, Theresa May was told by Philip Hammond, her then Chancellor, when she was PM, that going carbon neutral would cost the economy £1 trillion. I mean, it's not constitutional, but it's a significant change to the country, a big commitment. And the public surely deserve a say.
Well, the question mark isn't, is there going to be change or no change? Change is coming. We know change is coming because it's going to change us if we don't change first. And the answer is, how do we manage that process of change to have the conversation that, Lois, you want to have?
Yeah.
And I don't think that the answer is necessarily going to be a referendum. Like I say, I'll leave that to these two to argue about. But what I do think is that there are great models for conversations that we can have that are productive, that give people...
But you have to ask the British people if we, or they as a government, are allowed to borrow that amount of money on our behalf and change our country, change the infrastructure of our country.
Maybe shorten life expectancy.
I mean, this is not communist China. You know, in China, if they want an airport, they build an airport. There's no consultation. But this is a free country and a democratic one.
Well, what I'm saying, Mark, is you can have that free democratic conversation in a way that's more productive. You can have it in a way that's more productive, Mark. If you let me finish the sentence, I think it'll be slightly less unclear what I mean.
I'm going to strike myself down for that one.
Well, it's fine. It's fine, because we're all friends here and we're all talking about positive conversations, like the one we're having now.
Yeah.
That's a better conversation. What you do is you co-produce that. You bring people into the conversation. You look at them. We've got great models for this. We've got citizens' juries. We've got climate assemblies. We've got ways that we know
Yeah, but
that
we
this
need a
can work.
referendum. We do need a referendum. And I am also calling for, and my organisation is also calling for, a pause on all of the policies being implemented to do with anything to do with the green agenda until the referendum. And most importantly, a pause on all green taxes and the things that are put onto the bills for everybody until there's a referendum also. Again, the petitions
Lois,
on the website.
I'd like to support Joseph by suggesting that if we do pursue some of these green policies, jobs will be created. And actually, potentially, there's a GDP advantage if we invest in R&D for green technologies. And if we can sell green energy around the world, and if we can be independent when it comes to energy, from solar, wind and others.
You and I know that we can never be completely reliant on renewable energy. It makes up only 5% of the international energy across the board.
Yeah,
and
it's more than something like 40% here in the UK.
It's not reliable, though, is it? Look at the period, was it a couple of weeks ago? We had no wind. We were 2 days away from there being no electricity.
I knew we'd wind up talking about the weather.
No, well, it is the weather. It's not climate, it is the weather. But that's another debate. But, you know, we had to fire up a coal-powered fire station to make electricity that was mothballed and was going to be blown up by Mr Johnson
We need more
next
nuclear.
year.
That's what we want. We should have a referendum, he said, changing the subject, on HS2. That's not constitutional.
I thought you didn't like referendums.
I don't, but when it carves up Lichfield as bad as
so when it's
I think we should
Brexit and
definitely have a
Lichfield,
referendum.
okay
He
about
likes
it.
referenda that he's going to win.
Well, I think we would win.
Well,
this
perhaps
one.
I'll save Michael here for a moment here, and I'll take us back to, I think, what is the heart of the question here, is that you're worried that it's a ball around the leg. You're also worried, I've heard you say in the past, you're worried about the risk that it might pose up front, the cost that it might set us behind the rest of the world. But as you say, it can be the opposite. It can be the opposite of that, because you say we need to invest this up front. I see skills for the future. I see competitive advantage, because the answer is really simple. This is all about skills, and it's all about giving people the skills that they're going to need in the future, one way or another. And if we get on the ground level and move quickly on that. If we talk...
What if the science is wrong, by the way? Because the science is debated by some. And also, what if electric vehicles is not the way forward? Some people think that hydrogen is a better long-term solution for cars. So what happens if we spaff billions on this experiment and find that we took the wrong strategy or we were curing the wrong problem?
Well, come on, Mark. Let's talk about scientific consensus for a moment here, because you throw that one out there and then move into electric vehicles very quickly. And I want to pick you up on it, because there is a clear consensus on this, as I say. And I'm not just talking about scientific consensus, and you can look at the IPCC report and you can look at the levels of confidence they have against different things that they're saying, and that's the scientific process.
Sorry, that's widely contested.
Well, that's the scientific process.
There's a COVID consensus, which I personally challenge. So.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm not going to talk to you about COVID.
In the course of this pandemic, I think we've discovered that the science is not one single thing.
There's no such thing, I completely agree.
But anyway, fulfill your point.
You can look at the IPCC, and you can look at the evidence they have, and you can look at what the working groups behind that have done. You can see a transparent scientific process, just the way it should be. But I'm not just talking about scientific consensus, because I do think there is a clear human consensus for some form of action. And
where there's censorship, there is consensus, and there has been censorship on all scientific ideas that do not go with the mainstream green agenda.
Well, Lois, I reject that, because I do think that there are difficult conversations which are being had by the media about this, and we're all here.
Final thought before I come to Michael, who's going to bang on about Brexit again and Lichfield. What a lovely library Lichfield's got. But before we do that, what about the fact that if you're right, and you could be, that we decarbonise our economy and we go green, other countries like America, China, India, Brazil continue to pollute, continue to have a carbon footprint the size of a Yeti.
Absolutely.
At that point, our small contribution is a drop in the ocean. We've basically bankrupted ourselves, and still the planet heats up.
Mark, the UK has always been a nation of skills. We thrive on the skill of the people who live on these islands.
What if they're freezing to death? They won't have many good skills.
Well, we give those skills to them in advance by having collaborative, co-produced conversations.
But you haven't answered my question about if the others don't pull their weight.
Yeah.
If the others don't pull their weight, they will be left behind. They will be left behind when we have skills for the future that they haven't moved forward with. But I do think COP26 is going to give us a great opportunity to bring those people on board as well.
Michael, final thoughts.
Final thoughts.
Come on, Michael, back me up, please.
I'm in the middle here. I'm quite enjoying it for once. I'm being Mr. Neutral. I'm afraid I do take the point. You know, India is not turning up to COP26.
No.
China is not turning up to COP26.
I'm going.
That's great. South Africa's not turning up.
In a Hummer.
Probably. No, a Mustang.
So I just hope, you know, Boris said to a group of school kids only yesterday, I think it was, you know, that he thinks it's going to be a tough call to get an agreement. I hope we do get an agreement, but I also hope we don't do it for nout. In other words, what is the point of doing it if we bankrupt ourselves and find that others are not joining in too? We might be setting a great example, Joseph, but it won't make any difference to the amount of carbon dioxide and hydrocarbons.
And is carbon that bad anyway?
There we are.
Yeah.
Over to you, folks. Over to you. Mark at gbnews.uk. Michael Fabricant, fantastic to see you again. Do come and see us again in the studio. And also, Joseph Lewis, Policy Lead at the Institution of Environmental Science. And Lois Perry, Director of Net Zero Referendum Campaign Group.
No, car26.org, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Can I apologise for that factual error? I do hope you won't cancel me now.
I don't cancel anyone. I'm anti-cancel culture.
That's it. Well, there it is. car26.org. Inform yourself and find out more. And
sign the petition.
You can do the same. Go to Joseph's website and also go to Lois's as well. And you can make a decision. You'll be like Michael Fabricant.
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter, everybody.
In the middle. He's got enough listeners. He's got enough Twitter followers. There you go. Brilliant stuff. Well, let me know your thoughts coming up. Lots more to come. We're going to speak to the ex-wife of football legend George Best. What's it like being married to a genius, but a flawed genius like that great man? She's live at 10. Get your questions in. Mark at gbnews.uk. Tweet us at gbnews or Facebook. Search GB News. Coming up, US media superstar Megyn Kelly joins me after the break with the latest on the big stories from across the pond. Don't go anywhere. Well, it's Megyn Kelly time now, one of the biggest stars of US broadcasting and host of the must-listen-to podcast, The Megyn Kelly Show, joins us with her unique take on American news and culture. Now, the US National Institutes of Health is admitting to funding gain-of-function research on bats infected with coronaviruses at a lab in Wuhan in China. So, Megyn, great to have you on the show. What do we know?
Well, we know that Dr. Fauci, who basically runs the shop that has been accused of funding gain-of-function research, has been denying it since the beginning of this whole pandemic. He told Senator Rand Paul under oath that he was offended by the implication that they absolutely had never funded gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan lab. And gain-of-function basically means a way of taking a coronavirus and making it either more contagious or more lethal. We never did it. And now, this is my perspective, okay? Just to clarify, this is my opinion. What happened is last month, this journalistic outfit here called The Intercept filed a FOIA request of this group called Ego Health Alliance, run by a guy named Peter Daszak. It's a nonprofit here in the States, which stinks to high heaven. Ego Health Alliance was walking hand in hand with that Wuhan lab and doing all sorts of research that we were not keeping an appropriate eye on, best case scenario for us. And Peter Daszak's group got caught doing gain-of-function research. It came out last month in September. And a bunch of scientists came out and said, what is shown in these documents obtained by The Intercept is gain-of-function research. Fauci said, no, but all these scientists said 100% sorry, you've been caught. And now, a couple weeks later, we get an assistant to Fauci, a guy lower down in the totem pole, sending out an email or note saying, well, it turns out Ego Health Alliance was doing gain-of-function research in the Wuhan lab, but they didn't tell us about it. We swear we didn't know anything about it. We just found out. And, we're going to keep a much better eye on them from now on. And to me, my opinion is this is CYA. This isn't just, we legitimately just found out, we're shocked there's gambling here. It's they got caught, and this is their way of covering for it by saying, we just found out. But there's no way they didn't know what Peter Daszak was doing. And if they didn't, then everybody there should be fired. Because what it means is, at best, we gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to this group, kept no eye on him, then sent him over to the Wuhan lab to work with a woman they call Bat Lady on making coronaviruses, of manipulating them in a way that we knew could potentially be quite dangerous. Now, nobody's saying that what they did led to the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. But we don't know. We actually don't know all the facts. What we do know is nobody was keeping adequate oversight over this lab that we sent a bunch of taxpayer money into here from the States.
Well, absolutely. I mean, bad enough that the coronavirus might have come from a lab leak in Wuhan, but the idea that it was American money that funded this doomed project is the stuff of nightmares. Why is Fauci still in post, given the fact that his modelling around the pandemic has been so inaccurate? He's made so many mistakes along the way. He's been hypocritical about masks and other COVID measures. Why is he still in post, Megyn?
He is similar to Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, now disgraced and kicked out. He was forced to resign after a sexual harassment scandal. But they lionize both of these guys, the liberal press, the left wing here in the States. They lionize them. Why? They have calm manners. They both have these sort of charming New York, Brooklyn accents. They both deliver messages in a way that's sort of soothing and measured and engendered trust early on in the pandemic when people needed to trust somebody. And then the bloom came off the rose. We found out that Governor Cuomo had been issuing very dangerous orders, like sending COVID-positive patients back into nursing homes, the most vulnerable places with the vulnerable populations, killing off about 15,000 estimated New Yorkers, and then tried to lie about it and so on. Now he's gone. And bit by bit, we started to see the Fauci lies come. Not just, you don't need a mask. We learned out in his mind that was a lie because he was trying to stop us from buying PPE equipment needed by medical professionals. But on and on. He lied about what numbers we'd need to get in order to reach herd immunity. He clearly misled when it comes to gain-of-function research being done in the Wuhan lab. And they just won't let go. He's their hero. They've settled on it. And those of us asking questions, are deeply troubled by it because Fauci to this day has enormous influence over policy. And literally, as I was going to air with you, Mark, it just hit the news that the Pfizer vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds has just received emergency use authorization here in the States. And that's great for parents who want to give the vaccine to their very young children. I would never stand in the way. But what's already happened, I mean, I'm getting reports from my contacts in New York, is schools are already mandating an experimental vaccine for young children. My question is, how can they do that? How can they mandate that we stick an experimental, it's not yet permanently approved, vaccine in the arm of our 5-year-olds? The Fauci is influencing that. The hysterical person who runs the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, who breaks down into tears every other time she comes in front of the cameras, she's mandating that. And when those of us try to stand up and say, based on what? How much testing has been done? What about the heart infections or inflammation that we're seeing on the second dose given to young boys in particular? And just today it broke that if your kids had COVID, if they've got the antibodies, they're at greater risk if they get the vaccine of having this myocarditis, heart inflammation. We want more information. We're not saying no, never, and for no parent, no child. We're saying some of us want more information before our child and our kid's arm. And so far, the response by Fauci and everyone else to that has been, I know better.
It's truly troubling. I mean, it's spine-chilling that this vaccine, which of course, you know, has been taken by millions of people, and it's been argued that it's certainly impacted in a positive way hospitalizations and deaths, but it's not without side effect for some, and that's why it cannot be mandated, especially not for children, but frankly anyone in society. I completely agree with you, Megyn. A quick word on Florida before the break. Cases fall again in Florida. Of course, no mask mandate, no lockdowns, no business closures. So the governor, Ron DeSantis, is truly winning the argument.
You know what we've seen, Mark, time and time again? COVID doesn't care whether it's a blue state or a red state. It tends to go, the numbers go up when people are inside a lot. And now that the Florida weather is nicer and people are not inside the entire summer with air conditioning on, their numbers are going down. Here in the Northeast, we're going to have to deal with it in a way we didn't over the summer because it's getting colder and everybody's going inside. So in places that are not properly ventilated, you see some cases go up. It's going to be with us for a while. And the problem is we still have people who somehow believe that we can eradicate it, and we cannot. It's not going to happen. The best we can do is learn how to deal with it. And yet you get hysterical messages, again, like from Rochelle Walensky saying, even when you vaccinate your child, your 5 to 7 or to 11-year-old child, he has to wear a mask at school indefinitely. We have no idea when that's stopping. Your children are going to stay masked, and they're going to have the vaccine. And at what point do we get to take the masks off? Even once we've vaccinated 90% of the children and all of the faculty in the schools, at that point, she won't even promise that. Same for adults. You know, we're all vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. Can't take the mask off because the CDC, this organization that continues to lie to us, says I can't. They say when I'm indoors, I have to wear it. Why? I don't know. What are the metrics for when I can take it off? I don't know. Nobody will tell me. And even when they say that the kids need to wear it in school, they say all the studies show that masks work for children in preventing the spread of COVID. Well, it's not true. There was a great piece in New York Magazine done by journalist David Zweig that showed the CDC's own study, the most comprehensive one of 90,000 children in Atlanta, Georgia, showed the masks make no difference in preventing the spread of COVID inside schools. There had been no control group in any of the studies that the CDC likes to tout. And so there is no science to follow that would support these mandated protocols that keep getting shoved down our throats.
Megyn, I love America so much. I've got friends and family there, but so much for the land of the free. Now, after the break, I'll be asking Megyn how woke America's schools are. Also at 10, the ex-wife of football legend George Best joins me in the studio. Alex Best will be here. Get your questions in now. Mark at gbnews.uk. Tweet us at gbnews or Facebook your question by searching for GB News. Lots more of Megyn to come, but first, here's the weather.
Hello. We've got some very unsettled weather across the UK over the next few days. Heavy rain at times with Met Office weather warnings in place. Windy too. And those winds are coming in from the southwest, so it is very mild, as you can see on the pressure pattern. Now, we're keeping an eye on this weather front here because that's going to give some persistent rain through the next few days. The risk of some flooding, weather warnings are in place across northern England, southern Scotland and Wales. That weather front is currently across Northern Ireland and Scotland as we go through Tuesday evening into Wednesday, gradually sinking its way southwards. A lot of cloud in the sky, winds in from the southwest and very mild for the time of year. These are your overnight temperatures into Wednesday, more typical of what we would see through the daytime at this stage in October. So through Wednesday morning then, it's southern Scotland, northern England that sees the brunt of the rain. Will be quite persistent, I think, through the day here. And that just allows those totals to build up, so the risk of some difficult travelling conditions. A lot of cloud elsewhere, a few breaks in that cloud to the east of the Pennines, across southeast England as well. Some brighter skies later across the northwest with 1 or 2 showers, but highs of 18 degrees, very mild for this stage of October. As we go through Wednesday evening then, that rain gradually sinks into Wales and pushes its way a little bit further south with some very strong winds on that. We could see gusts of 30 to 40 miles an hour at times. Another rain warning then comes into force for Wales through Thursday as we see that rain starting to become more persistent here. Still very, very mild though across the bulk of the country. A little bit cooler across the northwest of Scotland as we see that cooler, fresher air starting to push its way in here. But as we go through Thursday, more of the same for western areas. Do take care if you are travelling because there will be some difficult driving conditions out there. We're expecting that rain to persist through much of the day. Elsewhere, some brighter skies. And as we go through Friday and into the Halloween weekend, it stays unsettled and turns just that little bit cooler. Take care for now. Bye-bye.
Derek has emailed the show, Mark, I'm not that stupid. Fauci is steeped in corruption, blindingly obvious. Alan has said, Mark, great show. Megyn Kelly is just fabulous. Tells it as it is. And indeed you do, Megyn. Let's talk about the National School Board, who have apologised for their letter about parents challenging curriculums in schools. So what concerns do parents have about what's being taught in schools?
So first of all, can I just say this is a lesson to all parents. Speak up. Speak up. Don't be silenced. And when your government does something outrageous, speak up even louder. And when they try to stick a hand over your face and shut you up and threaten you, speak up again. Just keep speaking up and speaking out, because that's how this thing got reversed. This group, the National Association of School Boards, decided to speak on behalf of all of its organizations, we now know, without consulting most of them, and said we've had all these incidents of violence. Meanwhile, their support didn't show any of that. of threats. Really, the vast majority of complaints they attached to their letter were of parents who wouldn't stop speaking when they were told to stop speaking, parents who had the nerve to not wear a mask. I mean, these were not domestic terrorists, and they were not criminals. They were parents exercising, in some cases, some civil disobedience, but mild. I mean, very mild milquetoast stuff. Anyway, so the School Board Association decided to coordinate with the White House. We know that now. To get a letter crafted, they sent the requested letter to the White House, just as they had orchestrated it with the Biden administration. It was farmed over to the DOJ, Department of Justice, which then threatened parents, saying, we might sic the FBI on you if we find that you behave inappropriately at a school board meeting. And instead of cowering, the media started, the right-wing media and the digital media started to put on parent after parent, said, this is outrageous. I will not be silenced. This is crazy. And a group over here called Parents Defending Education, which is a great group helping parents navigate the K through 12 insanity, decided to send a public information request, a FOIA request, to several of the people who are on that board, and got the email showing coordination with the White House once they'd been publicly humiliated. And Congress had a tough hearing with the Attorney General last week. They were forced to reverse. The letter's been withdrawn with apology. Almost 60% of the American public was against this letter to begin with. Only 19% supported it. So that's Dems and Republicans who are against this nonsense. The White House is embarrassed. The DOJ hasn't officially withdrawn its letter yet, but it's effectively been hobbled because Americans stood up and said, we're going to say what we want at the school board meetings, and you will not indoctrinate our children, and you certainly won't do it without objection from us.
To that, very briefly, Megyn, what's the latest on the tragic situation with Alec Baldwin, who appears to have accidentally shot dead one of his camera operatives, a member of the crew, the director of photography on his latest film, Rust. Do you think his career can recover from this?
Well, I do, because I don't think people are holding him responsible for this. And while he'll have a dark cloud over him for a while, it wouldn't be the first time. And he's beloved by the media over here, in particular the left-wing press, because he's been so critical of President Trump, and he's an established left-winger. So they're not all over him the way they would be if this had been a Clint Eastwood or somebody on the right who had done something like this.
Or Dave Chappelle.
But it's a tragedy.
Yeah,
exactly. Or Dave Chappelle is now no longer beloved. It's a tragedy for all involved. It was a 24-year-old assistant prop master in charge of the guns. Where was the head prop master? There was an assistant director who handed the gun to Alec Baldwin and said it was, quote, a cold gun. Where was he? Why didn't he catch it? And, there were reports about crew members allegedly playing with the guns, like target practice on the downtime there with real bullets in them. Why was that allowed? All sorts of incidents here that had suggested this was not a particularly well-run or safe set. And so while this 24-year-old girl who was the assistant prop master was in charge of these guns, apparently, I would posit to you that there are many people above her on the totem pole who are going to have to answer for this.
Check out the brilliant Megyn Kelly show, surely one of the best speech podcasts in the world, downloaded by millions. Find out why. And Megyn, I'll catch you in a week's time. Looking forward already. Well, it's 10 o'clock. Coming up, the big question with model, author and ex-wife of football legend George Best, Alex Best. She's here in the studio with me. Plus, I'll get to your emails very shortly, mark@gbnews.uk. So much to come. But first, the news headlines with Polly. And Polly's ready. Let's head to the newsroom.
Here's your GB News headlines this hour. The Queen has cancelled attending a major reception for world leaders at the COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow next week. Buckingham Palace say the 95-year-old monarch has followed advice to rest and regretfully decided not to travel to the event. It comes after the head of state carried out her first official engagement since her overnight stay in hospital last week. She appeared on a screen via video link from Windsor Castle during a virtual audience with the ambassador from the Republic of Korea. Well, earlier, the royal commentator Angela Levin told GB News her thoughts on the Queen's condition.
She's going to do something virtually. She's going to make a speech virtually, which she's tremendously good at, and I'll have everybody watching because she always does. But I think it's an issue that if you are quite old that you can't bounce back. She might feel much better, but I think people with older bodies take much longer to recover. It's very annoying, I think.
The Chancellor will call his budget tomorrow an economy fit for a new age of optimism as the nation recovers from the pandemic. It comes after Rishi Sunak announced that millions of public sector workers will get a pay rise next year. That includes teachers, nurses and police officers. Well, last year, public sector pay increase were paused after heavy borrowing during the pandemic. But Labour's shadow child poverty minister, Wes Streeting, has been commenting, and he's been critical of the latest announcements from the Chancellor.
The minimum wage increase doesn't go anywhere near far enough to compensating people for those losses. In fact, we calculated that even when you take into account the minimum wage increase, once you've factored in the universal credit cut, once you've factored in the national insurance hike, people end up being still about £800 a year worse off. And by definition, these are people on some of the lowest incomes when they go out to work.
The funeral of the Conservative MP, Sir David Amess, will be held at Westminster Cathedral next month. Cardinal Vincent Nichols, the leader of Roman Catholics in England and Wales, will preside over the service on November the 23rd. The Southend West MP was stabbed to death early this month, meeting constituents in a church in Leonsea in Essex. Sussex police say they're investigating 7 cases of women being injected or spiked on nights out. The reports have all come from Brighton and Eastbourne in the last week. Detectives have said they want to assure members of the public they will increase their patrols in affected areas. The United Nations has warned the world is on track for climate catastrophe and that plans to cut emissions still fall far short of what's needed. The organisation's environment programme said even with plans and pledges from countries to cut greenhouse gas emissions in the next decade, the world still faces global warming of 2.7 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. But SpaceX has had a leak, but not of confidential information this time. Instead, the company has revealed issues with its toilet. Some of its capsules have experienced problems at the launch of the company's first private flight. A toilet tube, we understand, in the rocket became unglued, spraying unfortunate onlookers with its contents. SpaceX and NASA are now tackling their toilet troubles ahead of its new launch on Sunday. You're right up to date. I'm back in an hour.
On climate change and Boris's green agenda, Stephen has emailed the programme and has said, Mark, are we getting electric HGVs? And will all mechanics have to retrain and become electricians? And what about electric planes? How's that going to work? And I think that's going to be the catchphrase for this show. How is that going to work? Brilliantly put. Thank you so much, Stephen. Nina, I love the Megyn Kelly section every week. She says it how it is. I did see the issue with the Biden administration using the DOJ to issue parents who challenge their children's schools with threats that they would be investigated by the FBI and classed as domestic terrorists. If you send your kids to school, you've got a right to call out that school for what it's teaching and how it behaves. If you can't have free speech in a school setting, where can you? It's time now for the big question, in which we speak to the good and the great from the world of showbiz, politics and sport tonight. A former air hostess who became a successful author and reality star and who became a national celebrity after falling in love with arguably the greatest footballer of all time, certainly from these shores. Alex Best married George in 1995, and it was a true love story, but one marred by George's tragic alcoholism. But this shouldn't taint the great man's memory, and here's a taste of some of the true high points of his life and career, both on and off the pitch.
I think I was very harshly treated.
Yeah, but you couldn't expect people to have too much sympathy for you, could you? Because you've fallen down a few times now.
Only through drink, yeah. You tend to find out when you drink too much, you fall down a lot.
Someone asked me once, George, you know, all the money you were earning in those days, it was terrific amount of money in comparison. You know, what did you do with it? So I said, well, I spent it on women and horses and dogs and casinos and fast cars. I said, and most of it I squandered, though. You know, over the years, when I've been playing football, I've had this reputation of going missing. Miss United Kingdom, Miss England.
Terry, I like screwing, all right? All right. So what do you do with your time these days?
Screw.
I see.
Correction, 2 geniuses. Not just George Best, but the great Terry Wogan as well. Alex wrote a best-selling book, a very moving book, about their amazing marriage called Loving George. And Alex has gone on to have a successful career in public life, notably starring in Series 3 of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, generating plenty of viral videos. And lots of other TV hits. And Alex is also passionate about nutrition as well. And I'm delighted to say that Alex Best joins me now. Hi, Alex.
Hello, Mark. Nice to be here.
I wanted to ask you whether it's painful to see footage of George again.
No, it's not. There's a programme on a couple of nights ago. And it's just lovely that, the kids nowadays can see footage of when he was playing, what a genius player he was. So it's nice to keep him in the forefront and for kids to watch him and see how great he was. And it's really good that it was recorded in those days, which is, something great to look back at.
And whilst it was playing out, you just whispered to me, what a handsome man.
Oh, he was.
He was a babe.
He was a babe, an absolute babe. And he was the typical, handsome, cheeky chappy, absolute character.
Yeah.
And he could get away with anything, that little Irish sparkle in his eye.
How did you meet?
I met him in Tramp nightclub, which was quite a...
It stands to reason.
Yes.
I didn't think you'd have met him at a health spa.
No. And I didn't meet him on the plane either.
Glad to hear it. And was there instant chemistry?
There was, yes, instant. I mean, the first day I met him, he was a lot older than I was, but I always had a bit of an old head and young shoulders.
Yeah.
And we just clicked, and that's it. He said to me there and then, I'm going to marry you, and I went, oh, really?
That's
He said,
amazing.
"Can I-"
When you say there and then, you mean in the first few weeks?
In the first day.
It's one hell of a chat-up line, isn't it?
Well, I don't know, it was some kind of, I don't know whether
meant
many
it.
people find that kind of spark when you think you've known somebody for all your life. There's kind of like some chemistry, and it's like a missing person that's not been in your life, and you meet them and you think, that's the missing link.
So
he's in a way.
More or less proposed to you on day one?
Yeah, but we both felt as though we had this chemistry and felt as though we'd known each other. It was just bizarre and strange.
Did you say yes at the time, or did you sort of put him in a holding pattern?
And I put in a big holding pattern. I was young, I was only 22, and I was flying around the world, and I had my own life. So I put it on hold for a year, and I bumped into him again about a year later, and it was my birthday, and he said, oh, can I buy you a bottle of champagne? And I went, oh, that'd be very nice. And then, from then on, that's when it started.
So a year passed after that first encounter?
Yeah.
And did you think about him in the course of that year?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because of what he'd said and the chemistry you had?
Yeah, I did. And it's just, it was just strange. And I met him on my birthday, and we were married 6 months later.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
So where was George in his life at the point when you met? Was he in a good place?
Not particularly, no. No, I think he was struggling with alcohol. He was in the middle of bankruptcy and losing his flat that he was living in, and being ripped off by all different agents and people. And I think he was at a bit of a, sticky wicket.
Yeah. Did you want to take that on, that project?
The thing is with George, you just want to help him. You wanted to help him. He was like this little lost soul. And I felt very protective and kind of like more maternal as well towards him.
Yeah.
And he wanted to look after him, wanted to help him. And, eventually we made a great team. I stopped him working, going up to, old working clubs for no money whatsoever. And I just put a stop to it and just said, right, George, you're a superstar. Why should you be doing, all these little bits and pieces? You've got to clean your act up and get serious and start, working properly.
And look, we've all had relatives and friends that enjoy a drink. Was it manageable at first?
George never said he was an alcoholic, He never admitted to it at all. I think probably with family issues.
Do you think he was an alcoholic? Or was he just party-loving?
No, I think he was an alcoholic. And he didn't want to be the way he was. And, you know, everyone keeps saying, and I keep bashing on about it, but it is a disease. And addiction is something that people don't choose to have, you know.
Were there two Georges? Was there the drinking George and the sober George?
Yeah.
And how did they differ? Tell me about sober George.
Sober George was very, very immaculate, very articulate, very prompt. And as soon as sober George was around, you had to be running around with his little briefcase, and you had to be on the ball.
So a perfectionist and very ordered.
Absolutely. And very orderly, yeah. And the funny thing is, the other George was totally different too, the sober George. And the sober George wouldn't have liked the drunk George.
Yeah.
And he don't think he would have recognised himself in there.
It's very sad that he succumbed to alcoholism, and he's missed to this day, of course, you know, not least by yourself. Did he make a concerted effort to get off the bottle, or do you think a decision was never really made in his mind to kick the habit?
I think he made a very big concerted effort. I mean, when his days were up, and he knew his days were up, he started turning yellow, he was in absolute agony. I called an ambulance, and I told them, you know, it's not an emergency, but I need to get my husband to hospital because that's the only way. I couldn't get him into hospital. So I got him into Chelsea and Westminster. I wanted it to be somewhere local from where he lived. And then they said, you've got to stay in overnight. You know, you've literally got to go into intensive care now, and you've got to be seen to straight away. You've got to stay in. And he didn't want to. He even hid his shoes. And, you know, he just said, no, that's it, I'm leaving. And he went back home. He still had the cannula in his arm. And I said to him, look, George, I said, I'm too young to be a widow. And I'm really, really upset with him. And he said, well, get a specialist and see what you can do. And then I promise you that I will go and see somebody. So I phoned up the Cromwell Hospital. I phoned up the Lister Hospital because I thought it was next door. So where we lived on Cheney Walk at the time. And they said, oh, my dear, no. They said, no, we don't, you know, we don't deal with, you know, livers here. But the Cromwell Hospital, and there's a fantastic professor there called Professor Roger Williams. Sadly, he passed away not too long ago. And I phoned his secretary, and he said, well, we'll see him on Friday. And then I got George to use the idea that he was going on Friday, and by then he did. But he just wanted to have a few more days to think, well, this is my career, my drinking career is over.
Yeah. And maybe say goodbye to the bottle.
Yeah, and he knew.
So was it one last hurrah?
In him, yeah. Yeah.
And he should still be with us today. I mean, he'd be in his early 80s?
No, he wouldn't. He'd be 76.
So he'd still be a relatively young man.
He was 59 when he passed, yeah.
Truly shocking. Of course, I guess he looked older than he was because of his lifestyle.
Yeah, but then as soon as he stopped drinking, he looked 10 years younger within a week.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You could be forgiven for regretting the day you met him, do you?
No, not at all. No, absolutely not. You know, he taught me a lot. We had a great life together. We travelled around the world, and, you know, we were a partnership.
Shirley's emailed the programme, lots of emails coming in, and I'll get some of those questions flashed up on the screen, Alex. Shirley, what a fantastic and moving interview with Alex Best. Strong and honest. I guess you had to be strong, didn't you? For the both of you.
We had to, because there's no hiding from this fact. You know, it was there in front of you and everyone can see it. It's not like a hidden illness. You know, you couldn't hide it because it was so clearly, obviously, at times when he was going to work at places, he was pure drunk and... You know, everybody knew that, so you just have to be honest. And also, I think he felt in the position to also try and help and talk to others with the addictions. You know, he felt very strongly about that.
Why do you think he drank?
I think George started playing when he was very, very young. George has always been a very, very shy person. And I think, I mean, he told me a story once where he was too shy to get off the bus with all the other people at school, on the way to school. And I think he drank to hide his shyness.
It was like an early coping mechanism, an early crutch, which then stuck. I guess maybe it sort of became intertwined with his personality, his identity? That he couldn't be George without the booze?
Without having a joke with the lads and everything.
And what about his humour? I mean, this is the point, is that he was a genius footballer, but he was something of a genius as a human being too, wasn't he? Because he just had the Midas touch with people, and he was very witty and very clever.
He was very clever, very witty. I mean, his IQ was unbelievable. I mean, he could finish a cryptic crossword in about 10 minutes. He was super. And I think probably that was kind of like a flaw with him. When you're a super genius, like quite a few of these super geniuses do have a bit of a flaw with them, don't they?
Yeah.
And it must be so awful to be so damn good at everything. It must become a bit boring. What else do you do? And I suppose also the football and everything, and when he stopped playing football, there was nothing more for him to do.
Yeah.
I think that's what happens with quite a few.
I mean, that's it. When a footballer retires, it's downhill from there.
Yeah.
How do you recreate those glories?
Yeah.
So questions are with us, thanks to my brilliant producer, Tom. Let's take a look at this one. Here we go. Did the age difference ever impact on the relationship?
No, I think I acted older than he did.
You were perhaps more mature by the sounds of it. You were the grown-up.
I was the grown-up. I was the mother, yeah.
Did you know much about football when you met him? Did you care about football?
No. I mean, I knew who George was, of course, because you would have been living under a stone not to, you know. My dad is a rugby player and always has been, so I've always been brought up with rugby, never with football. He'll watch football, but that's not his passion. So it's always been, I'm down at the rugby club, my mum's doing teas, and so it's
good that you weren't in awe, therefore.
No, not at all.
Were there ever accusations that you were, I don't know, being a gold digger or something?
Yes.
Which, by the way, given his parlous financial affairs, is a bit of an ironic accusation.
There was no
Did
gold.
you have that accusation?
Oh, yeah, loads of times, because it's typical, you see a young blonde with a famous footballer, and then you automatically think that way, don't you?
Yeah. Did that hurt you?
It did, but it was trying to prove to everybody, and I did prove to all of his friends and family, more importantly.
Which is all that matters.
Which is all that matters, and to George, that just was not the case.
Yeah. Of course not. Finley on email. Finley, thanks for your email. How did it feel losing George so soon after you divorced? I mean, I understand you were on good terms after the relationship ended, but tell me about the moment. Where were you when you heard the news that he was gone?
It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I was at home, and I saw it on television, unfortunately. I knew he was in hospital. I felt awful, and I regret it, to be honest. I'm regretting being divorced. And the thing is also, when you get divorced and then 5 months they die, you almost felt like you are a divorcee and you're not meant to care about them.
Yeah.
When you've only been, divorced for 4 months.
And there oughtn't to have been, but was there any guilt? It's like we've had this divorce and now he's passed away. Did you have any of that sense of, because a divorce in itself is a painful thing?
Of course. But it's one of those things, I was young and I just had put up with him with the drinking for so long, and he was so good and absolutely wonderful. And then when he started drinking again and then just going downhill even worse than he was before, I just thought, I've done what I can, and I saw a few counsellors and they said, look, if you, same old record, if you love them, set them free. I was at my wit's end and I couldn't do anything more to help him.
That's exactly right. And arguably, it might have been the wake-up call for him to change, and then that just wasn't possible.
No.
And it's not your responsibility, and it's a tragedy, and we are where we are. And final question, this is from Jolene, who asks, do you think the liver transplant that George received was wasted?
That's a tough one. I sincerely thought that would be the end. Luckily, his family didn't know. The recipient, the family. But I think it was the thing, it was just awful. It wasn't George's drinking after liver transplant that actually killed him. It was him not taking his immunosuppressive drugs. because you're meant to take them at different times, and they're very dangerous things. They stop your whole immune system.
Right.
I believe that was what killed him. But, I mean, you know, you can't deny somebody a chance.
Yeah.
And you know, it's hindsight, so...
Listen, you're still out there. You've really made a splash in the jungle. Did you enjoy that, by the way?
Yes. Actually, no, I did. It was one of the best things. And so many people that I hear interviewed that have been in there say the same thing. It is just brilliant. I mean, it's great being in Australia. I mean, they're in Wales.
Well, this one that's playing out at the moment, right, is you in action.
Goodness.
And this is, I believe I was told by my team, watched by over 100 million people.
Yeah, apparently it was one of the most watched trials.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
There's some suggestion from my colleagues, in particular Liam and Daniel, who suggested that it's a very popular video because it's a bit saucy.
Oh.
Have you seen that? I mean, don't get me wrong, you're a very beautiful young woman, but I don't see it myself. But apparently there's an audience out there for that kind of thing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Who knew?
No, I didn't know that.
It takes all sorts,
yeah,
doesn't
it?
Amazing. Now, listen, what are you up to?
I'm at the moment, I mean, I'm doing lots of stuff in Northern Ireland. I'm just about to go there tomorrow. I've got this festival going that's for the youth, and it's kind of like diversity. It's ethnic cultures, kids festival, getting together and, you know, playing football matches or cooking.
Bringing people together.
Bringing the whole community, you know, diversity together. And it's a big festival, so I'm going along. And I'm with Jerry Armstrong. We've got to go and present some of the kids some trophies.
That's fantastic. What's the festival called?
It's called the Ethnic Youth Festival.
Brilliant, and it's happening in Northern Ireland. And when's it happening?
It's on Saturday afternoon.
Fantastic, and it must feel good to go back to Northern
Ireland.
Ireland.
I love it. It's my second home. Well, I lived there for 2 years.
You lived there, and it's, of course, the birthplace of your dear ex-husband.
Yes, flying to his airport on the way there as well.
That's amazing. I think you're hosting some awards as well on the 20th
I am.
of November.
That's in Northern Ireland as well. Yeah, that's the local women's
And I'm
awards.
sure you're celebrated there because, you know, of the years of happiness that you gave to George.
Yes.
And you did, so much, I think, for him.
Thank you.
And we spent the afternoon, you know, looking at what you've been through, and it's remarkable. And I'm sure he's up there, you know, smiling down on you.
I hope he is.
Definitely. And look, we miss the great George Best, and it's been lovely to remember him in your company.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, Alex, and do come and see us again soon.
Absolutely.
Good luck with those gigs in Northern Ireland.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for your emails as well. Coming up, we've got tomorrow's newspaper front pages as they drop, including the Queen pulling out of COP26, and also a crisis in social care for children. And what would you do if you won the lottery? Also coming up, Nigel Farage. We'll talk Brexit, and also we'll discuss a few other things, including whether Rishi Sunak needs to worry about the deficit. Lots to come. Do keep the emails coming in. I'll see you in 2.
telly, it doesn't work.
You're watching Tonight Live. It's Mark Dolan in for Dan Wootton. A French politician says Brexit is a catastrophe for Britain and blames it for the UK's empty supermarket shelves, petrol crisis and lorry driver shortage. Thierry Briton, who's also the European Commission's Internal Market Commissioner, also says the UK had shown bad faith in dealing with fishing rights. In the Channel Islands, owned by Britain, Jersey's government rejected 75 fishing licences out of the 170 applications it had received from French boats. Let's get reaction from the king of Brexit himself, GB News' very own Nigel Farage. Hello, Nigel.
Good evening. I think cretin is a French word originally, isn't it? And no doubt I will get abused for using it. I mean, come on. You know, OK, shortages. Long Beach, which, by the way, President Biden, in his last town hall, couldn't remember the name of, the biggest port in America.
Deeply worrying.
I mean, disturbing. But the point is this, you know, ships backed up, hundreds of them, can't get into Long Beach. All over the world, major supply chain problems, partly caused by the pandemic, but mostly caused because what governments have done is to create more money.
Right.
And we have a bigger money supply chasing the same number of goods, and that means shortages and rising prices. Folks, it's called inflation. You haven't seen it for 35 years, but it's back and it's here.
And we thought we
stay.
could digitally print money with abandon, and we're going to find out that's not the case.
The remarkable thing is that it's taken this long for the disease of money called inflation to come in. Because we started this with QE, all the other thing, forced money creation. We've been doing it now for a decade. Yeah. It's taken time to kick in, but now it's here. I accept a slight adjunct. The real point here is the French thought their European Union was their way of getting back after everything since 1066. This was their chance. Agincourt, all the terribly painful things they've been through.
Humiliation in the Second World War.
Abject humiliation. You know, and Le Resistance, which they all joined about 48 hours before. Some were very brave and did it. But here's the point. This was Brexit to them is they've lost control of the Brits. They've lost control of the Brits. They've lost control of the Anglo-Saxons, and they hate that concept. Free markets, the City of London, financial services, the things we in New York do well together. They loathe all of that. So you get these idiot French politicians coming out saying all this nonsense. It means nothing, but here's the kicker. And the kicker is we are about to face the biggest confrontation between the Brits and the French for decades.
The Channel.
I sense it's coming before Christmas. We are paying them 130 million, another 54 million to stop the migrant boats coming. They are still coming.
Yeah.
I mean, tonight, Harwich, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
They demand fishing rights in Jersey and elsewhere. We've granted 95% of French fishing requests in licences around the United Kingdom. They're fishing up to our 6-mile line. They're catching, do you know, in Cornwall, the French are catching 90% of the haddock. And we're getting 10. And still they want more.
And this is ideological, right?
Of course. Ironically, I rather respect them. Because the French government stands up for the French fishermen. Our lot have sold them out ever since Ted Heath back in 1972. But in Jersey...
that Brexit deal wasn't great for fishermen, was it, in this country?
It was a complete sellout. You know, I mean, look, the Brexit deal, in the end, it had to be done. The sellouts were fishing and Northern Ireland. Right? And they were bad sellouts. And I just wish Boris could be more honest and frank with us about it. But the French want more, and we've been appeasing them. So when you appease the alligator, he comes back and wants not just your mate, but you as well. You know, as Churchill talked about. Here's the problem. They're threatening to cut off the power supply to Jersey. 9% of our electricity comes from France. We are not
a decisive amount.
So we now import coal, we import gas, and we import electricity, all of which we could produce in this country, but we don't, because Cameron, Osborne, the globalists decided It's all about the market,
And we're sitting on decades worth of shale gas as well.
Shale gas, coal, nuclear potential, all of these things. So we've made big strategic errors. But with France, we are, at some point, Mark, between now and Christmas, going to face a problem, because they're now saying they will start blocking our goods at the ports. Trade war.
Yep.
Even if Brussels doesn't approve it, the French will go for a trade war.
And this could be the manoeuvre that gets Emmanuel Macron re-elected.
Well, the one thing about the French has always been consistent is they hate the British. Or, no, I'm wrong, the English.
Right, to be specific.
It's the English they don't like.
Yeah, that's right. The whole EU are about to take Scotland back into their bosom, or at least so they dream.
Well, it'll never happen. But it's the English they hate. And there's now this new intellectual, Zemmour.
Oh, yes.
Zemmour, who... And I've not met him. You know, Marine Le Pen I know very well. I've known her for 20 years.
And this chap's to the right as well, isn't he?
Oh, way to the right. Makes us look like, you know...
Makes you look like Jeremy Corbyn.
I mean, well, not quite Jeremy, but maybe Nick Clegg. But you, for the first time ever, got a candidate on the right that could win. Could win. And, of course, he, of course, as well.
Because Marine Le Pen's got too much baggage, especially that...
Marine Le Pen... Look, I know Marine. She's not clever enough. She doesn't get economics.
Right.
And there's
she's just a populist tub thumper.
Yeah, and good at the cultural stuff, but no more than that. And, of course, her father's shadow may not be fair, but it's always there. And that's Vichy, it's anti-Semitism, it's a very unpleasant diet. Zemmour has a Jewish connection to his heritage, which makes a difference. Some of the things he says we may not agree with in this country. He, of course, puts out the anti-British line, as all the French do.
Of course.
But there's now, make no mistake, there is now a battle for the future of France between now and the next 6 months. Zemmour could win. And I never said that about Le Pen. I always thought Le Pen could get 42%. She got 35%. Yeah. And bashing the Brits is their national occupation. So Boris, step up, defend the Channel Islands, defend our fishermen, and if that means in the short term a trade dispute with the EU and France, do you know what? They call us Treasure Island.
Yeah.
They call us Treasure Island because they sell us more goods than we sell them. So we now need resolve. Now is the moment for a dose of nationalism.
I'll tell you something, watch this space. Nigel is back tomorrow, of course, at 7 and returns to that chair a week today. Thank you, Nigel. Looking forward to tomorrow's show already. It's never boring, is it? On Nigel's Watch, coming up in Uncancelled. Spiked Online's Frank Furedi on Netflix turning woke. But next in our media buzz, the Queen has cancelled her appearance at the COP26 event, of course, the Eco Summit. Also is being a royal overrated and a crisis in children's social care. And what would you do if you won the lottery? Lots to get through. See you in 2. back to our conversation about whether there should be a referendum for Boris's eco agenda. And let's have a look. Michael says, Mark, of course there should be a referendum. I'm more than comfortable getting electric cars and installing heat pumps, but I will not be a pawn in this government's net zero game. Their green ideology is based on bogus science, just like their COVID lockdown and masking policy. Michael, thank you so much for that. Do you disagree? Let me know. mark@gbnews.uk. Let's have a look at the big stories in our media buzz right now. And here are the newspaper front pages. Let's start with Metro, shall we? Rishi's new age budget. He's even got the sandals to help him, of course, the Chancellor Rishi Sunak preparing his budget. And do tune in to GB News for full coverage of the budget tomorrow, including Rishi Sunak's budget statement from the House of Commons, which we're expecting around 12:30. And full reaction across the afternoon and evening. And do tune in for our budget special tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, which I believe my producer Tom is already preparing as we speak. OK, next up, The Telegraph. Test and Trace criticised as eye-watering waste of cash. There you go. Who could disagree with that headline? Moving on. OK, so what we'll do now is we'll get to some of the other newspaper front pages shortly. But still with me, my excellent panel, former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, Conservative commentator and GB News' very own Calvin Robinson, and journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler. Now, the Queen has pulled out of hosting a major reception for world leaders at the COP26 Climate Change Summit next week on health grounds. It was hoped Her Majesty was bouncing back following an overnight hospital stay last week. She had hosted 2 foreign ambassadors virtually this morning, but tonight Buckingham Palace has confirmed Her Majesty has decided to follow advice to rest and will send a video message to delegates instead. However, she was reportedly able to hold a telephone conversation with Chancellor Rishi Sunak about tomorrow's budget. That's how hands-on our monarch is, that she speaks to the Chancellor the day before the budget. That's why we love her so much. Meanwhile, in Japan, a princess in the royal family is leaving entirely after she married a commoner. Former Princess Mako married college sweetheart Kei Komuro earlier today, which meant that she had to give up her title as part of the country's strict laws, which also forbid a woman from taking the throne. She was seen bowing to her relatives and embracing her sister as she left the imperial residence in Tokyo. The Japanese public have been divided over the situation after it was revealed the newlyweds will relocate to New York, with some raising the question about who will fund their security. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Is this the Japanese version of Megxit? Throw in a Spotify and Netflix deal and an interview with Oprah, and you're good to go. But is being a royal all it's cracked up to be? I've got to say that we're supposed to envy royals, Calvin, but I wouldn't be one for anything.
I don't know if we're supposed to envy them, but they're supposed to set a high standard that we can look up to and aspire toward.
But haven't they got these amazing, perfect lives?
Nobody has a perfect life. They're still human. But I think it shows decency that Princess Mako stepped down when she married a commoner. If only our own His Royal Highness Prince Harry would have done the same, we might have missed a lot of this mess and hoo-ha that we've had over the last few months.
Do you think that sort of unofficial, or in the case of Japan, official royal code, that you sort of marry your own type is the way to go? Do you think that's where the royal family have gone wrong over the years, starting with Diana?
It's before Diana, wasn't it? It was the king that, married an
Wallace
American and had to abdicate. Indeed, but yes, there's a duty to maintain tradition, and I think part of that is marrying within the hierarchy of the aristocracy.
Yeah. So what you ought to do if you're Prince William or Harry is you should find some sort of Swedish princess.
Oh, there are plenty of them.
Yeah.
But some people want to make a statement, and I think that's...
Well, I just Googled earlier for Swedish princesses. I was surprised how many are available. Some of them at a price, though, I ought to add.
That was the wrong website you were actually on there, just make that clear.
SwedishBabes.com. They look very classy to me, Dawn.
I'm sure.
By the way, if that's a website, I'm in trouble now.
Yeah. I think it's very romantic what Princess Mako's done, and I think you should be able to marry who you want.
And stay a royal?
You can.
Yeah, I know.
And stay royal?
And she should have been able to stay.
It doesn't work, Dawn.
But it should work. I mean, and the situation is completely different to Harry and Meghan. I'm not even going to talk about them. But I mean, the thing is with that situation now, because of the hideous laws in Japan still about only men can inherit the throne, her 15-year-old, should anything happen to her dad, her 15-year-old brother is going to be taking the throne. I mean, you know, why are we in 2021 talking about only boys are the important ones and the girls don't matter? I mean, she was treated fairly appallingly by her own family.
They're not saying that only boys are important and girls don't matter. You have to have a lineage. You have to have a way of monitoring the line. Just like in Jewish culture, it goes down the feminine line. It doesn't matter which line you choose, as long as you have one.
No, but what is wrong with the female inheriting the throne? What's wrong with that?
Well, it is saying that it obviously is saying that, you know, only a man can do the job.
Of course it is.
Which is obviously, you know, we got rid of many moons ago, and it is, you know, it's Japan is a very traditional country, so I would very much doubt that they are about to change.
Oh, the best
for them. And just like you said, I think it is superbly romantic.
Yeah,
and
no,
by the sound of things, like, it was more of a nightmare than it was. You know, to have married somebody correct.
But at least you can tell what Japanese culture is. You can clearly define it in your mind. You can't do that with British culture because we've diluted it so much through these ridiculous things, ideas like multicultural society and things that we water down our own values.
Well, that is...
They stick to their
we live in a
tradition,
multicultural society, of course.
Yeah, indeed.
So the royal family tries to reflect that.
That's not a good thing.
Yes, of course it's a good thing.
No, it's not.
But to stick to our own borders and that sort of nonsense.
No, I'm not saying we have to be we can be multiracial without being multicultural. We should clearly have a culture that we say, this is British culture, this is great.
But you're
welcome to come live here and take on board our culture and our values and our traditions.
We want to embrace other cultures.
Hold on, so sticking to a tradition, even if it's wrong, is the right thing to do?
Well, it's lasted a few thousand years, hasn't it?
Huh?
Yeah.
You know, the monarchy in Japan, for example, is an ancient and revered institution.
But it doesn't mean it can't be tweaked.
Of course, it should be modernised, especially in this...
You salami slice it, you undermine it from within, don't you?
Absolutely.
Calvin.
Change and decay.
Yeah, change and decay. I mean, the bottom line,
Change
Sam,
and improve.
You have to wonder, don't you? I think that being a rich celebrity is probably quite fun. You know, unlimited funds, fame. But the issue with being a royal is you have all of the spotlight of fame and the responsibility and none of the fun.
Well, this was Megyn's issue. Obviously, wanting to start out as an actress, it shows a certain amount of narcissism. No disrespect to actors, but you know, finding out when it was obvious that you have to follow a certain protocol, don't act, etc. And it didn't stick. It didn't stick with her, and so therefore that's why we had Megxit.
Well said. Never mind the NHS. Are we overlooking a looming care crisis? English councils need almost £3 billion more in funding for children's social care in the next few years. The Local Government Association warns that costs will rise from £10.9 billion in the year to 2022 to £12.6 billion in 3 years' time. They've called for an extra £600 million each year, as well as £1 billion to combat existing pressures. In the last decade, over 16,000 more children have been looked after, but local council spending on children's services has plummeted by almost half in 7 years. Antoinette Bramble, there's a name for you, lovely lady, chair of the LGA's Children and Young People Board, said the soaring demand for support is likely to increase further as the long-term impacts of the pandemic become clearer. I think she's got a good point, I've got to say. A few days ago, I spoke to Chris Wilde, the author of The State of It, a brilliant new book about the care system for children. Its stories from the front line just demonstrate how broken it all is. He suggested to me that young people in care are vulnerable in particular to criminal gangs.
It needs to be regulated, especially 16 to 18-year-olds. We've got Ofsted, but Ofsted obviously is too expansive. We need an independent regulator which only takes care of the care sector. That's it.
And why do you think that 16 to 18-year-olds are particularly neglected?
Because what happens is because there's no legal protection for those young people. So when they come into the care sector, they go into a supported accommodation, unregulated
houses. And that is basically an open prison, right?
Of course it is, yeah. It's a recruitment haven for criminal gangs and paedophiles and predators.
By the way.
Sam Dowler, we're letting young people down, the most vulnerable in our society.
Well, absolutely. They really just need to say that this is the amount of money they need. And, surely after the pandemic, where they found so much extra money, something like this is a drop in the ocean. And if we as a nation are letting down the most vulnerable children in the country, then what are we doing?
Yeah. Calvin, you're a former teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, normally I'd say, where's this money going to come from? But at the moment, we're printing money. We're making it up as we go along. We've borrowed 300 billion. So what's 2.7 billion at this point? Just give them the money. But also, let's look at the root causes of these situations. Let's look at the issues that are going on that are causing so many children to end up in care. I think fatherlessness is a major one in this country that we don't talk about enough.
No strong male role model for families.
Absolutely. This is why a lot of young kids are ending up in gangs. Kids are twice as likely to end up on the streets, twice as likely to end up doing drugs, and twice as likely to end up in crime because of fatherlessness, because of the breakdown of the family unit, and no one's addressing this issue. So let's look at the causes of the issues.
Why aren't they addressing it?
Because it's a taboo. It's a thing, even just saying this, I'm going to have people on Twitter saying, what are you saying against single parents? And it's like, I'm not saying anything against single parents. I come from a single parent household. I'm not suggesting there is a right and a wrong way to do things. I'm suggesting that there's an ideal situation, and kids need a strong female role model and a strong male role model, preferably. They need two good, strong parents in their lives, loving parents in their lives, and that is fundamental to a good start in life. And we've not addressed that issue for so long, and kids are looking for it. They're looking for belonging and attention elsewhere because they don't always have it in the home, and they're ending up in dire situations. And over COVID, schools usually look out for kids. They're usually a safe haven for kids. And over COVID, we said to kids they're not allowed in school anymore, and they were stuck in places where they shouldn't have been without people looking out for them. And we're going to have lots and lots of mental health issues with young people as we come out of this pandemic.
The COVID thing is a very important point, because I think we have literally thrown youngsters under a bus for the last 18 months. And I think the way we've treated the most vulnerable children.
A group that faced
society.
almost no mortal peril from the virus.
And that's the thing, Mark, and we just seem to sort of shut down schools, shut down sport, shut down any social interaction. And as you say, Kelvin, schools are so important, not just for education, but also for picking up on children that are vulnerable and that are being abused.
And they're stuck in a situation at home, perhaps.
They can't get away from it,
and they are go to school to get away from it.
Very vulnerable to gangs. I mean, the county line drug gangs. It's a very sad situation, but we do have a magic money tree or forest somewhere along the line, so kids should now be looked after properly.
Lots of opinions coming in about my panel, actually. Carol Barr has said, listening to you as much as I can on GB News. Love your panel tonight. Just brilliant debates. Well, thank you, Carol. These debates are nothing without you. Declan says, I love all the different hairstyles of the panel tonight. And the fashion statements, too. I must say, the three of you together do look like a sort of an interesting, an 80s band.
Nice.
Right, OK, I'll take that as...
In Human League.
In the Human League. It's a kind of magic? I think so. Yes, indeed. That's lovely. However, some resistance from lovely Leona, who says, Mark, could you start wearing some decent trousers instead of these stockings that you wear every single day? They are awful. I've got to say that the legs are quite...
Did I hear Nigel Farage comment on your outfit as well, Mark?
Nigel's not happy with me wearing a check shirt. Not because he doesn't think it's smart, but he suggests quite rightly that it strobes on television.
Right.
And Nigel should know because he's a pro and he's old school and he's back tomorrow at 7.
I was just going to ask what colour scheme you were actually aiming for.
Well, I'm trying to save the planet, so I got dressed in the dark. Lots more to come. Our Media Buzz continues. The cricketer that won't take the knee. Plus, are you ready to start shaking people's hands again? And coming up in Uncancelled at 11, has Netflix gone woke? We'll hear about extreme political correctness within our big corporations. But first up, here's the weather.
Hello, we've got some very unsettled weather across the UK over the next few days. Heavy rain at times with Met Office weather warnings in place. Windy too, and those winds are coming in from the southwest, so it is very mild, as you can see on the pressure pattern. Now, we're keeping an eye on this weather front here because that's going to give some persistent rain through the next few days. The risk of some flooding, weather warnings are in place across northern England, southern Scotland and Wales. That weather front is currently across Northern Ireland and Scotland as we go through Tuesday evening into Wednesday, gradually sinking its way southwards. A lot of cloud in the sky, winds in from the southwest and very mild for the time of year. These are your overnight temperatures into Wednesday, more typical of what we would see through the daytime at this stage in October. So through Wednesday morning then, it's southern Scotland, northern England that sees the brunt of the rain. Will be quite persistent, I think, through the day here. And that just allows those totals to build up, so the risk of some difficult travelling conditions. A lot of cloud elsewhere, a few breaks in that cloud to the east of the Pennines, across southeast England as well. Some brighter skies later across the northwest with 1 or 2 showers, but highs of 18 degrees, very mild for this stage of October. As we go through Wednesday evening then, that rain gradually sinks into Wales and pushes its way a little bit further south with some very strong winds on that. We could see gusts of 30 to 40 miles an hour at times. Another rain warning then comes into force for Wales through Thursday as we see that rain starting to become more persistent here. Still very, very mild, though, across the bulk of the country. A little bit cooler across the northwest of Scotland as we see that cooler, fresher air starting to push its way in here. But as we go through Thursday, more of the same for western areas. Do take care if you are travelling because there will be some difficult driving conditions out there. We're expecting that rain to persist through much of the day. Elsewhere, some brighter skies. And as we go through Friday and into the Halloween weekend, it stays unsettled and turns just that little bit cooler. Take care for now. Bye-bye.
I stand corrected on Princess Diana. Rachel, thank you so much for your email. Mark, Princess Diana was actually more royal than the Queen or Prince Charles. Her lineage goes back, albeit 1,000 years, to King Charles II. Therefore, our beloved Diana certainly had real blue blood in her. Rachel, thank you so much indeed. Well, we'll get to more of your emails very shortly, but still with me, my excellent panel, Dawn, Calvin and Sam. The South African cricket team defeated the West Indies earlier today at the T20 World Cup, but their victory was overshadowed by star player Quinton de Kock withdrawing from the match after his refusal to take the knee. Yesterday evening, the team were ordered by Cricket South Africa to take the knee before every World Cup match. However, it was then announced this morning that de Kock had pulled out of playing. He has previously refused to take part in the gesture and said in June, "It's my own personal opinion." Here is South Africa captain Atemva Bamuma speaking on his teammates' decision.
Quinton is an adult, he's a man in his own shoes. We respect his decision, we respect his convictions, and I know that he'll be standing behind whatever decision that he's taken.
Calvin, do you think that Quinton de Kock should be taking the knee?
Absolutely not. And good for him for standing up for his principles. It's kind of a forced politics, like they have to take a knee at this point, otherwise there's something bad about them. He said it's his own personal choice, and I back that 100%. But the CSA said the board will await a further report from the team management before deciding the next steps. What next steps? If he doesn't want to do it, that's his business. Why should he be forced to take a political stance? He's a sportsman, he's not a politician. I don't understand, when is this going to end? When are they going to stop taking a knee? What are the aims or the goals they're heading towards?
But is a gesture that says racism is wrong a political stance, Calvin?
It's not just a gesture that says racism is wrong, though, because if it was, it would be universally accepted as such. As we know, it comes from the Black Lives Matter movement, which evolved from the George Floyd untimely demise, and it's all centred around that American politics of neo-Marxism, essentially. You know, the Black Lives Matter movement was against the family unit, it was against Western values, it was against the police force. Not many people support those principles. Everyone is against, well, most people are against racism, of course, and if there was a moment of solidarity to say, yes, we're all against racism, fair play. If there's like linking arms on the pitch or something, great, I'd be all for it. But this is clearly a movement that is tarred with a political organisation, Black Lives Matter, so people want to disassociate themselves from it.
I think you raise a good point, Calvin, because I don't remember any pushback against the Kick Racism Out of Football campaign.
Exactly, and we've seen football teams that have booed to Black Lives Matter, booed to taking a knee, but have cheered when footballers have come on the pitch and said we're against racism. So it's not about being against racism or not, it's about being tied to that neo-Marxist organisation. Nobody wants that, so either find something new or just don't do it. But what is the aim? What does taking a knee actually achieve? These sportsmen are high-profile people. They could be doing a lot for charity if they wanted, a lot to raise awareness for anti-racism campaigns if they wanted to do. They could be funding campaigns, they could be doing anything. But taking a knee does nothing, changes nothing. It doesn't take racism out of the sport. It's a virtue signalling movement, isn't it? It's theatre.
Dawn?
It's what I totally agree with Calvin, and it's been more divisive. I mean, the whole Black Lives Matter political side of things has been more divisive in this country. It's created more racial division. And I know personally footballers in this country who are sick now of the whole political mess that they have to play their sport in. That, you know, I know footballers personally who actually want to stop doing it, but you know what, they daren't, Mark, because if they do, they're in trouble. And this is the footballers, you know, mixed race footballers, black footballers, they daren't. There's only one, I think, Wilfried Zaha for Crystal Palace. He refuses to do it.
And John Barnes told me in an interview, of course, legendary black player for England and Watford, he said that if he were a player now, he would not be taking the knee because it's an empty gesture. Sam, what do you think about this?
I think the problem is when you have Turkish supporters, for example, turning up with a placard saying no, taking the knee. By then not taking the knee after that, are you not just playing it into the hands of the racists? I mean, I assume, obviously, that there is still, and I know there is still, obviously, a massive problem with racism in sport. So this, surely by carrying on doing it, you're still highlighting that fact. I mean, you might say it's virtual signalling, but at the same time, here we are talking about it, and we're talking about the problem of racism in sport, which maybe we wouldn't be doing if they weren't doing it.
What really annoys me about the players taking the knee, especially the England players now, are going to go to Qatar, where 6,000 people have died building those stadiums, where women and gay people...
Amen to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well said, Dawn. Dawn gets the last word. We will return to that conversation. Lots more to come. Lots to come in our media buzz. Is the handshake about to make a welcome return, and the bear hug and other tactility with friends and strangers? Is homeschooling about to surge as well as parents get concerned about what's being taught in schools? And what's an autosexual? Look forward to an explanation of that one. Plus, my panel will reveal their greatest Briton and Union Jackass. A huge last hour to come. But first, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Thank you. Here are the latest news headlines on GB News. The Queen will no longer be joining world leaders at the COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow next week. Buckingham Palace is saying the 95-year-old monarch has followed doctors' advice to rest and regretfully decided not to travel to the event. That comes after the head of state carried out her first official engagement since her overnight stay in hospital last week. She appeared via a screen linked from Windsor Castle during a virtual audience with the ambassador from the Republic of Korea. Earlier on, the royal commentator Angela Levin told GB News her thoughts on the Queen's current condition.
She's going to do something virtually. She's going to make a speech virtually, which she's tremendously good at, and I'll have everybody watching because she always does. But I think it's an issue that if you are quite old, that you can't bounce back. She might feel much better, but I think people with older bodies take much longer to recover. It's very annoying, I think.
The Chancellor has promised his budget tomorrow will provide an economy fit for a new age of optimism as the nation recovers from the COVID pandemic. It comes after Rishi Sunak announced that millions of public sector workers will get a pay rise next year. That includes teachers, nurses and police officers. Last year, public sector pay increases were paused after heavy borrowing during the pandemic. The funeral of the Conservative MP Sir David Amess will be held at Westminster Cathedral next month. Cardinal Vincent Nichols, the leader of Roman Catholics in England and Wales, will preside over the service on November the 23rd. The Southend West MP was stabbed to death earlier this month, meeting constituents in a church in Leigh-on-Sea in Essex. The United Nations has today warned the world is on track for climate catastrophe and that plans to cut emissions still fall far short of what's needed. The organisation's environment programme said even with plans and pledges from countries to cut greenhouse gas emissions in the next decade, the world faces global warming of 2.7 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. Now, SpaceX has had a leak, but not the kind of leak which is confidential information. The other one you probably don't want to hear too much about. The company has revealed issues with toilets, its plumbing on board, failing in one of its capsules. At the launch of the company's first private flight last month, we're told a toilet tube in the rocket became unglued, spraying unfortunate onlookers with its contents. SpaceX and NASA are now tackling these toilet troubles ahead of its new launch on Sunday. Right up to date. Now let's get back to Tonight Live.
One small step for man, one giant step for the plumber, by the looks of it. Thank you, Polly. Now, the Queen will no longer be joining world leaders at the COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow next week. Buckingham Palace say the 95-year-old monarch has followed doctors' advice to rest and regretfully decided not to travel to the event. It comes after the head of state carried out her first official engagement since her overnight stay in hospital last week. She appeared on a screen via video link from Windsor Castle during a virtual audience with the ambassador from the Republic of Korea. Let's take a look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Rishi's New Age budget. Rishi Sunak will insist he's ushering in a new age of optimism for the economy when he unveils his post-pandemic budget today. That, of course, is tomorrow, but this is tomorrow's newspapers. The Chancellor, who prepared for his speech in trendy New Age-style socks and sandals, which are called sliders. He's wearing sliders, which cost 95 quid. He's going to offer potential pay rises for millions of public sector workers and a boost for the NHS with extra funding. His attempts to portray a brighter outlook comes amid fears the UK faces a gloomy winter of shortages, soaring energy bills, price rises and growing inflation, which could cancel out any wage increases in real terms. Next up, The Telegraph. Sunak starts building for life after COVID, and poll finds public backing for a referendum on push for net zero. And finally, Test and Trace, say The Telegraph, criticised as eye-watering waste of cash. Scheme failed to enable return to normality despite £37 billion funding, says report. And there you go. 37 million quid. Clearly the government there with a case to answer. The Eye. Queen pulls out of COP26 on doctors' advice. Say goodbye to Sunak, the big spender, says the Eye newspaper's Katie Balls. The Guardian now, a thundering wake-up call. World faces 2.7 degrees centigrade temperature rise, says the UN. Vaccinate pregnant women as a priority is another story on the front page of The Guardian. And Chancellor to strike bullish note in his budget tomorrow. The Daily Star, which features an obscure journalist called Dawn Neeson, who's obscure but talented by the looks of it. Burger off you wimps, writes Dawn Neeson in her fantastic weekly column in The Star. And also on Joanna Lumley, of course, the topic of my monologue today, Ab Fab Joanna, bring back rationing and rescue planet Earth. Who do you think you are kidding Mrs. Lumley? Of course, a bit of a play on words there to Dad's Army. The Times now, ex-minister faces Parliament ban after breaking lobby rule. Fast growth gives Sunak chance to splash the cash, and Queen cancelled trip to climate conference, but there she is on Zoom, looking fabulous in a lemon yellow dress with a winning smile. She looks fantastic and clearly on the mend. Queen's regret, say the Mail, as now she quits climate summit. And Emma bites back in Dracula County, first victory since the US Open triumph. Emma Raducanu celebrates at the Transylvania Open yesterday. Now the Mirror. Tired Queen pulls out of summit. Monarch 95 told to rest at home instead of hosting world leaders. And Sunak on the slide, 95 quid footwear as his budget falls apart, say the Mirror. Now the Indie, the independent budget warning for Sunak over NHS. Health leaders have told the Chancellor there is urgent need for social care funding ahead of today's budget. Ministers put off COVID decision for 2 weeks. Ministers will not make a decision on COVID restrictions for 2 weeks until the impact of half-term on infections can be seen. Brilliant stuff. It's time now for Uncancelled. Yes, this is Uncancelled, in which we tackle the dark underbelly of the news agenda. We've heard about extreme political correctness infiltrating universities and schools. But are the greatest proponents of woke culture large corporations? In a brilliant new article for the Spiked Online newspaper, Frank Furedi writes that millennial creatives are using identity politics to rise up the corporate ladder. The article is entitled Netflix and the Woke Power Play, and I'm delighted to say that Frank Furedi joins me now. Hi, Frank.
Hi there, Mark.
A brilliantly researched article. What have you discovered?
One of the things that really struck me is that in all the big companies, big media companies, you have this cohort of young creatives, young professionals who are using their commitment to woke ideology as a medium to put pressure on the bosses. And because their bosses have given way to them in previous years, because Netflix and all these big companies continually promote their reputation for being diverse and their reputation for supporting the BLM movement, the reputation for being LGBTQ+ and everything else, they are very defensive, because once you've been called out for not being woke enough, all you can do is apologize, or all you can do is hope for the best that somehow the problem will go away. And what I'm finding is happening is that these young sort of employees are able to put pressure and use that as a way of going forward, getting promotions and becoming socially mobile. And as you probably know, recently we saw this demonstration in front of Netflix where they were trying to call out and cancel Dave Chappelle for his apparently bad humor. And I think what was very, very interesting was that the company was completely at a loss how to respond to these people, because on the one hand, Chappelle makes a lot of money for them, but on the other hand, the last thing that he wants is to lose control over its employees.
When are these companies going to remember, Frank, that they exist to make money?
Well, I think they do, and there are a few examples. I think one of the most interesting example was what happened when employees tried to get rid of Joe Rogan, of Spotify. I mean, Rogan's got the largest podcast. It makes a lot of money for Spotify, and I think at that instance, Spotify looked at its balance sheet and basically said, all right, guys, I know you don't like Rogan. I know that in a different world, he would be canceled. But just hold it for a second, because we cannot afford to get rid of this guy because he's so important. So now and again, when you have a personality, a celebrity who's got mass following, like J.K. Rowling's or for example, Rogan, then suddenly their kind of balance sheet and their woke politics, sort of becomes much easier to reconcile, and they can say, well, not in this instance. This instance will be realist and very pragmatic. But what I'm really worried about is that in a very short period of time, this young generation of creatives are going to become the executives. They are going to be the ones that will be running this company. And be interesting to see how far they will go in promoting their crusade.
Correct. It's certainly an attack on free speech, isn't it? Do you think there will be a counterculture of other companies who push back against all of this extreme political correctness?
I think eventually there will be. I think the biggest worry for me, particularly as an academic, as a sociologist, is the way that the publishing world has been colonized by these people. I think in the publishing world, they are literally playing the role of freelance censors, where they're going around looking to be offended. There's a whole industry of what they call sensitivity readers, where they're reading manuscripts and making sure that it's sensitive to all the different identity groups that are around. And under those circumstances, you literally have the institutionalization of censorship from below. And that is of tremendous concern, because I know a lot of people whose manuscripts have been rejected, or alternatively, whose manuscripts has been accepted. But once these guys began to look at it and realize that they are not on message, not on the woke message, they've been pushed out of the system, and they haven't been able to publish. So that to me is the biggest worry of all at the moment, the publishing area.
Do you think that we are losing the war on woke, Frank?
It's a question that I struggle with. On a good day, I think that we're getting somewhere, we're fighting back. But I think at the moment it's touch and go. And I think the reason why it's touch and go is because there are a lot of people who know that this is a really big problem. This is a very big challenge to democracy and to freedom. But for some reason or another, they're censoring themselves. They decided to keep quiet. And this is particularly a problem when influential individuals who should be, sort of standing up and be counted are deciding to watch their shoelaces and pretend it's not really going on. So somehow we have got to get these people to be a little bit braver, to have a bit more courage, because unless we get a few more individuals taking a stand and encouraging other people to voice their fear of wokeness, this is going to be a very, very, very long struggle. And I hope that in my lifetime, it's possible to see some kind of positive result, because unless we resolve this question, I think the future of our society, the future of tolerance and of a democratic form of public life are very much under threat, because particularly because the media and the cultural institutions are so much on one side, and our resources are so limited. I mean, we have GBNews, we got you guys, but there aren't very many TV channels and radio stations that are speaking out against it. So it's a very one-sided battle at the moment.
And we've got you, and we've got the excellent Spiked Online website. Frank, it's very important, as you said, that those who are rich and famous and powerful, who have a platform, are the ones to speak out, because luckily they are too big to be cancelled. J.K. Rowling, Ricky Gervais, Dave Chappelle.
Exactly, and this is very much the case. If you have cultural capital, if you are well known, if you're a celebrity, it becomes really difficult for you to be pushed out. It's usually the people who have relatively minimal resources backing them up that are vulnerable to this. And I think that if you could get a few more people like Dave Chappelle to stand up and use their talent and use their charisma to kind of support our kind of side of the culture wars, you'll find that things could easily begin to unravel. Because I think the reason why the woke establishment is so confident is because they don't get called out enough. I always think of the story of the little boy and the emperor, when all of a sudden the little boy says, "Oh, the emperor's got no clothes." I think it's very much the case with these people. You know, they're not particularly strong intellectually or morally. They're living on thin air in a sense. They're living and succeeding because they know that they're not going to be challenged. So I think the minute they begin to be challenged by a few individuals, we can see a different dynamic begin to kick in.
Frank, it's very simple. They're bullies. And what do you do with bullies? You stand up to them. The reason why they're bullies is they are cowards. And Frank, you're no coward. A fabulous article. You can read it at Spiked Online, spiked-online.com. And do come back and see us again soon. Frank, thanks for staying up for a brilliant and enlightening conversation. Thank you, Frank. My panel are still here, and we'll get more reaction to the big stories of the day. Still talking now, man, honestly. Once he gets going, there's no end to it. So we'll get my opinions and also those of the panel and yours onto the national airwaves in the next break. Why are breastfeeding couples giving everyone the creeps? We'll also reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. We've got lots to get through. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, we've got some very unsettled weather across the UK over the next few days. Heavy rain at times with Met Office weather warnings in place. Windy too, and those winds are coming in from the southwest, so it is very mild, as you can see on the pressure pattern. Now, we're keeping an eye on this weather front here because that's going to give some persistent rain through the next few days. The risk of some flooding, weather warnings are in place across northern England, southern Scotland and Wales. That weather front is currently across Northern Ireland and Scotland as we go through Tuesday evening into Wednesday, gradually sinking its way southwards. A lot of cloud in the sky, winds in from the southwest and very mild for the time of year. These are your overnight temperatures into Wednesday, more typical of what we would see through the daytime at this stage in October. So through Wednesday morning then, it's southern Scotland, northern England that sees the brunt of the rain. Will be quite persistent, I think, through the day here. And that just allows those totals to build up, so the risk of some difficult travelling conditions. A lot of cloud elsewhere, a few breaks in that cloud to the east of the Pennines, across southeast England as well. Some brighter skies later across the northwest with 1 or 2 showers, but highs of 18 degrees, very mild for this stage of October. As we go through Wednesday evening then, that rain gradually sinks into Wales and pushes its way a little bit further south with some very strong winds on that. We could see gusts of 30 to 40 miles an hour at times. Another rain warning then comes into force for Wales through Thursday as we see that rain starting to become more persistent here. Still very, very mild though across the bulk of the country. A little bit cooler across the northwest of Scotland as we see that cooler, fresher air starting to push its way in here. But as we go through Thursday, more of the same for western areas. Do take care if you are travelling because there will be some difficult driving conditions out there. We're expecting that rain to persist through much of the day. Elsewhere, some brighter skies. And as we go through Friday and into the Halloween weekend, it stays unsettled and turns just that little bit cooler. Take care for now. Bye-bye.
Lots to come in the final 40 minutes of the show. Let me tell you, we've got tomorrow's newspaper front pages and the big stories of the day. Let's have a look at the Express, and they are leading with Rishi, our new age of optimism. Now Britain needs you to deliver. Rishi Sunak will today unveil his ambitious plan to build an economy fit for the future and usher in a new age of optimism, and I will drink to that. Finishing touches, Rishi Sunak there photographed making his plans for the budget with his dog Nova by his side. I think the dog's a new dog. I believe he's acquired that dog recently. And the Star, of course, brilliant column from Dawn Neeson, who's with us tonight on the panel. Burger off, you wimps. Meanwhile, who do you think you're kidding, Mrs. Lumley? Abfab Joanna, bring back rationing and rescue planet Earth. That's what she said. Well, of course, it was the topic of my monologue tonight, which you can catch on our Twitter feed at GBNews. Of course, you can rewatch the whole of this show via our fantastic app and previous episodes too. Marvellous. OK, there we are. We are back in the room. Thank you, Faye. Still with me, my fabulous panel, the aforementioned Dawn Neeson, Calvin Robinson and Sam Dowler. The daughter of the billionaire F1 mogul Bernie Ecclestone, Petra Ecclestone, has decided to homeschool her children because of what she calls woke stupidity that she's seen at schools. Petra and her fiancé Sam worry that schools are out of touch and are teaching children wokeness from a young age. Sam told his followers on Instagram, "We choose what they're taught. We homeschool. We have teachers and sport coaches. I was against it initially, but I have to say I really love it." Might seem like a great idea if you can afford it, but what about normal kids who just want an education without being indoctrinated? They can't get mummy and daddy to pay for private tutors every day. Dawn, can you blame teachers that consider homeschooling so their kids are not brainwashed?
I can't blame them at all, to be honest. I never thought I'd have anything in common with Petra Ecclestone, I must admit, but I think
you've got as many shoes.
Really, yeah, OK, I wish.
But apart from that...
But apart from that, I just think this is a sensible thing to do, provided, obviously, you can afford it, because what they are teaching... They seem to forgot that... I mean, you're a former teacher, Calvin, but the point of kids in school is to have an education.
Yeah.
To learn how to read and write and do maths and history and geography and everything else. It's not to be taught critical race theory or transgender rights.
Yeah, or to spend half the day trying to work out what gender their teacher is.
Well, quite, exactly. I just wish schools would just get back to, especially given what we put kids through in the pandemic, to actually teaching lessons.
I mean, this is the problem, isn't it, that what's happened now in schools is they've become very politicised.
Absolutely. I put out a tweet recently saying, I strongly support homeschooling if you can afford it. I didn't think it was a controversial tweet, but I received so much vitriol from teachers, and I think it's because they felt exposed. Because, you know, we know that 70% of teachers are left-leaning. We know that 80% of academics are left-leaning. That wouldn't necessarily be a problem if they weren't indoctrinating young people in the classroom. And I've seen it day in, day out.
And teachers have always been to the left, like, by a majority, but this is different. This is woke ideology.
Yeah, queer theory, gender theory, critical race theory, in the classroom,
and these are disputed
in the
theories. These are not... these are not
but they're being taught. They are being taught as fact, and that is illegal. Yeah. And everyone knows it's illegal, but it's going on everywhere. But it's not just because teachers are activists. It's because this is what the resources are. We got rid of textbooks a long time ago in the name of progress. And instead of that, we have these online resources that teachers go and download stuff in order to teach a lesson. And they're full of all these theories.
And it's so divisive as well, don't you find, Calvin? It's like, it's telling, like, you know, sort of like, you know, little black kids that, you know, you are destined to be slaves, you are, you know, you're not going to succeed in life.
You're oppressed, you're held back, and it's self-perpetuating because
and
you
then
tell
sort of
people
like
that
white
believe
kids
it.
that you are privileged.
I think they were saying that they were oppressed and they were slaves, and I think it's important that I was never taught about slavery in school.
I don't know. I think it's been taught in school, but Britain is
let's address that fact as well, because people always say I was never taught this in school. Let's address that, because first of all, you might have been taught it, but you might have been taught it poorly, or secondly, you might have been taught it and not remember being taught it. So let's just not say we weren't taught about slavery.
I definitely wasn't taught about that when I was at school, but also things
it's
like
been on the curriculum for a long time.
Teaching about
you weren't taught about slavery?
Teaching about... No, I wasn't. Teaching about LGBT families, for example, is important in eradicating homophobia and transphobia in later life. So if you learn about these things when you're very young, it's for example, like I wouldn't say, oh, you know, don't say you have a boyfriend in front of my young children. Of course you can. That is the best time, because kids, young kids, are not racist. They're not homophobic. They're not transphobic. So they need to learn these things from a young age in order for it to be normalised for them to not be taught hate later on, maybe by their parents or by society at large?
First of all, it's a parent's job to pass on their values and to teach children.
So what if their values are awful?
By your opinion,
or homophobic.
By your opinion, that's
so racists are allowed to be taught.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's a parent's job to teach kids and to pass on their values. School is supplemental to the home.
Yeah, so they should be taught different things.
It's not the
school and at home.
It's not the state's job to replace parents. That's the biggest mistake we're making in this country.
I don't think they're doing that, though, are they?
We are doing that because we have companies like Stonewall, which are ideologically driven, going into schools and teaching queer theory, teaching gender theory.
Not going into schools specifically. They have
quite literally.
They have recommended texts which are about, it's about live and let live sort of thing. And you have to be able to do that.
It's telling 4-year-olds they can choose their gender. That is not appropriate. And parents have a right to say, I don't want my kid taught that. And if you're homeschooling, that's a good way of getting
So do you agree with all the protests outside the schools in Birmingham from extremists basically saying that they didn't want their kids to be taught about LGBT values?
I believe that parents have a right to say what their kids are taught.
Okay.
Absolutely. And the biggest argument against homeschooling is that people say, well, kids should socialise. I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
But what we forget is that there's a lot of success with homeschooling in America. You have hubs, parents come together so that kids are interacting. It's not about keeping your kid at home with just the parents. It's about meeting, scientists and English people and maths teachers and coming together to teach kids, but making sure your kids have good British values, good Christian values, whatever your values are, you're passing those values on to your
Sam,
kids,
what about that
not the
documentary,
state values.
the Channel 4 documentary about schools in which one particular classroom separated white children from children of colour? And one particular moment in that film, a little boy actually sort of left the classroom in tears because he'd been told that he had white privilege. This was a primary school.
Well, obviously that's ridiculous. It has to be done,
that's what's happening.
Yeah, but it's not. That is one particular example, and obviously a ridiculous example because nobody wants that to happen. It's about introducing these ideas along with all the other ideas as well. If you're, for example, you have racist parents and
wait a minute.
You are at home learning just from them, you will learn racist values, and you will be a racist when you grow up.
Why are you assuming that so many people
happens.
are racists? Why are you making assumptions about people's values?
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you are being homeschooled and you don't want to
I don't think many people in this country are racist.
I think that is not true.
Are you saying that most British people are racist?
Not most.
I don't think most
at
people
all.
are.
I think there are quite a few, though. You just need to watch a football match. You can see there are plenty of racists right in the crowds.
How often do you go to football matches, Sam?
I watch it on TV.
Well, there you go. I go every week, and it's not like that.
Well, not like that every week, of course not.
No,
but you don't see it anywhere else.
The problem with metropolitan liberals. They think they have better values than everyone else. They think they know better than everyone else. So they want to pass those values and indoctrinate young people in their own worldview. That's what you're
No, I'm saying you have to learn a whole.
You're saying you're better than the majority of British people.
You have to learn everything. You have to learn about slavery. You have to learn about
Well, you learn.
As I said, gay family.
You sort of study Shakespeare and Charles Dickens, and you learn arithmetic and subtraction, and you clearly were educated to within an inch of your life. Why you're so articulate, and that was taxpayers' money well spent. But these are things that you're learning which are factual and tools with which to fulfil your potential later in life. But for example, Catherine Birbal-Singh, who's been made social mobility chief in this country. She's the Social Mobility Commissioner now, and she's talked about the fact that she doesn't want black children to be told that Britain's a racist country or that they are at a disadvantage because of their colour, because she said that will already create a victim culture. And I think what she wants to encourage is that schools are about attainment, and the message from teachers should be that if you do your best and you work hard and you get great results, you'll have a great life.
I completely agree with that. I don't think Britain is a racist country. There are racists, of course. There are homophobes, of course. And as we get older, and older racists like, oh, it's just Granny, she's a bit of a racist, or etc. These things get ironed out as the generations pass, and we experience more from life, and kids experience,
Can we just cut to the chase here? Schools should be about educating children in the basics, and we're failing them on that very level. Let's get the basics sorted out.
Sex ed. Yes, it should go down to reading, writing, arithmetic.
Maths,
everything else comes from the parents. We've replaced facts with feelings.
Dickensian times then altogether, just like Mark just said.
Well, I was never given sex education at school, and I eventually got the hang of it.
That's not what your wife says.
Which takes me to my next story. Narcissus was known for his beauty. After rejecting all romantic advances, he saw his reflection glisten in a pool of water, and from that day on, he fell in love with himself. staring at his reflection for the remainder of his life. He died not knowing the love of anyone but himself. Our modern-day narcissist is Brazilian Playboy model Luana Sandian. She told the Daily Star she has discovered that she is, in fact, an autosexual. See, I thought that was being inappropriate with a Toyota, but how wrong I was. It's actually where people are more attracted to themselves than others. A few of those in showbiz, let me tell you. The model realised that she had a fetish for herself when she looked in a mirror whilst wearing a Halloween costume. She said, I was attracted to myself. I always felt that way. I just didn't know there was a name for it. She continued, it just means I love myself a little bit more and I'm just happy with myself and how I look. Well, maybe this is the reason why people are having less sex. Everyone's in love with themselves. According to a YouGov poll, only 29% of the population have sex once a week. That's less than a third. Whilst 30% say they aren't sexually active at all. Some of the reasons mentioned are decreased alcohol consumption, social media scrolling and video game playing. Oh no, Mrs. Dolan does all three. That explains everything. Come on, Britain, we can do better. We need a young population. So what do we think? Sam, are you an autosexual?
Well, I've definitely...
You ought to be.
Because you've got such beautiful eyes.
Oh, hush up now. I definitely have... I'm sure I've been with people. Actually, do you know, when I was at university...
Sure you have.
When I was at university, there was
Spare us the details.
There was...
Family show.
There was scrawlings on the wall in the female toilet saying, oh, if you ever have sex with Sam Dowler, he'll stop and look at himself halfway through. So... That was obviously a lie. That was obviously a lie because that hadn't happened. But assuming my vanity meant
I tell you, you are so lucky that you were written about on the walls of the girls'
And it wasn't even
loos.
true, obviously. You were as well, Mark. I hate to break it to you, but it wasn't quite as complicated.
In less than glowing terms. Yeah.
But it is just generally about, like, there's bound to be people... I don't think it's a new thing at all that people, like, you know, during that would be, like... happy to look in the mirror and look at themselves.
We've just got a new name for it now, haven't we? I can't keep up with whether...
It's the opposite of body dysmorphia, isn't it? Body dysmorphia is when you see something ugly in the mirror.
Yes, that's right.
Even though you're not ugly.
Yeah.
But
That's
this is
not
the
sexuality,
opposite.
though. That's
I mean, that's the only question is it possible that there are mingers out there who are autosexual and think they're amazing?
Why not? What is a minger these days?
Mingersexual.
Well, I'm pleased to say the team have put together some slides of famous mingers. No, they haven't. No, they haven't.
But you know what this is?
Starting with the panel.
We'll do that tomorrow. We'll do the mingers gallery.
Everybody wants to be a minority at this point. That's what this is. There's no such thing as autosexual. They're making it up. They want to be a sexual minority just like everyone else. They'll get their own
What
flags.
about you? Now, listen, give me your appraisal. So, Calvin, I'm going to ask the whole panel, actually. Yeah. I want you to rate each of yourselves out of 10.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
OK, so we'll start with you, Dawn. What do you reckon you are?
Oh, God, pretty bog. About 3, 4.
Well, I've spoken to Mr. Neeson, and he's giving you
one.
an 11. Calvin.
I'll give myself a modest 6 out of 10.
Oh, come on. You're an 8 at least.
Oh, thank you.
9.5.
Well, that's saying
Sam, what about you?
I would say a 6 as well. Compared to the great beauties out there,
Right, Mark, what about you?
Can I ask my audience, could you please
don't.
rate the panel?
Mark.
On a scale of 1 to 10. By the way, the problem is, because I got a lovely email earlier from Leona, and she's not happy with my very skinny trousers tonight. So I think Leona's given me minus 27.
What would you give yourself,
But what I give
Mark?
myself, look, middle of the road, I'm going to give a Keir Starmer answer. 5. That's why no one likes Keir Starmer. It's a boring answer.
7, definitely.
No, look, I mean, I hope it's all about you want to be sort of nudge just above the majority. So I like 5.1. As long as I'm, it's like football. You don't want to be in the relegation zone. Do you? So I think I'm mid-table. I think I'm basically Everton.
Right. At my age, I'm well relegated, love, so I don't care anymore.
Well, I tell you something, the audience will decide. Why don't you offer us ratings out of 10? But especially,
this is outrageous.
If you're going to be harsh on me, because my
honest.
panel want to wrap them in cotton wool. There seems to be some disagreement over hugging and handshakes post-pandemic. Today, Prince Charles was pictured greeting people with a namaste greeting, which is a very nice sort of cupping of the hands. But he also did some handshakes as well. And the Queen shook all of her guests' hands at an engagement at Windsor Castle recently.
quite right.
So where are we at with the handshake? Do you think, Calvin, that the handshake is back? That was the first casualty of the pandemic, wasn't it? Oh, wow.
Good to see you, Mark.
From across the water.
It's what we do. We're English gentlemen. We shake hands. We're social beings, aren't we?
Did you carry on shaking hands throughout the pandemic?
I didn't change any of my habits. I just lived my life as normal. The government cannot change my habits. It's not within their remit.
Did anyone resist your handshake?
Oh, yeah, plenty of people. They try to do that silly... Nana on her show, she does that silly elbow thing. It's like, Nana, stop it. Give me a hug.
Nana does that to me, but it's straight in the ribs. Don't know why. But, look, the truth is that we only know this is over when we do things like handshakes and hugs again.
I'm with Calvin, I've never stopped. And as far as the hugging was concerned, as soon as the government told me to stop hugging people, I wanted to hug people more.
Yeah.
In fact, I wasn't a hugger before it started. I certainly am now. I'm just hugging everybody. People I don't even know.
Yeah, that's when it turned into
looks.
an episode of Black Mirror, the dark sci-fi programme, was when politicians were telling you who you could and couldn't hug. Or in particular in Australia, when one particular leader said, don't talk to your neighbours.
That was ridiculous, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was the health chief of Australia.
Yeah, don't...
Well, everybody needed good neighbours in Australia.
Oh.
Well, exactly. I mean, can you imagine a COVID-secure version of Neighbours?
I know. I have to say, like, I did stop and I missed hug. I'm a hugging person. I missed it very much. But I was living with my father at the time, who was, you know, he has cancer, so he was at risk. So therefore, I didn't want to do anything that could possibly put him at further risk. So I think if I was, you know, just if I didn't have that, then maybe it would have been different. But I did feel like I had to, you know, stay away from people, keep the social distance, etc. And nowadays, I would ask before I would give someone a hug. I didn't ask you, Dawn.
No, I know, you didn't ask me.
But you made a choice. That's your personal responsibility.
Absolutely.
It is making a choice.
Absolutely, yeah. And I would expect people in my position to have done the same thing. But also, you know, if you're not in that position, you don't think you're at risk, or you live with anyone at risk, then, you know, you have to take each case as it comes.
Yeah.
The emails are flooding in, the ratings for my panel based on their attractiveness, let me tell you. And you're not pulling your punches.
No.
Rachel, Cal and Dawn, Calvin and Dawn, 10. That other guy, 0. Oh, Sam.
Shocking. I don't think that's about looks.
Your harshest critic. And I get 11 plus. Rachel, I don't deserve that, but thank you so much.
Rachel, he really doesn't deserve
Rachel,
that.
I bet you're an absolute babe. Russell, hi, Mark. By the way, there's no introduction. The emails, you're just coming straight in with the numbers, which is brilliant. Russell says, Dawn, 10, very attractive lady. Calvin, 5, crazy hair. Can't remember the other guy's name, but a 7, bit vain. That's Russell.
He's got my number, and it's a 7.
Yeah, your other half is called Russell, isn't he, actually? So...
Carol, thanks for your email. Dawn and Calvin are so right. I taught for 20 years in primary schools, and the subject of racism never arose.
As I said.
Well, I think she's arguing that's a good thing.
I know.
But look, it's all about opinions. The phases of life mean that a child cannot process things that adults expect them to. They need basics. My parents and grandparents all left school at 15. They could read and write perfectly and were all numerate. I give Calvin 10. This is the same email, by the way, just straight into the numbers. I give Calvin 10, the other guy 10, and you, Mark, 11. Oh, look, you're being too nice. And the lovely Dawn, 21.
Wow.
I like her.
Because she looks that. Love her. There you
She's
go.
nice and kind.
Yeah.
Christine, hi, Mark and team. Great show tonight. Just wanted to say that if my children were of school age now, I would certainly be considering homeschooling, even if, as a family, we were financially worse off. Love Calvin and Dawn, the other guy, not so much. Can I just say that I don't actually check the emails. I read what my audience say.
That's great.
But
they're the answers I would expect.
But you know what?
Honest opinion.
GBNews is about all opinions. But this is supposed to be a place where we debate stuff, we talk, because you can't do it anywhere else. I'm very excited, by the way, to have that email from Christine, because it's actually the mother of our amazing director, Faye.
Oh.
Christine, as you know, there isn't even a number that contains how gorgeous Faye is. She's off the charts. She's off the charts. So, Christine, thank you for watching, and thank you for giving Faye to us and the world. Now, before you get your sick bags, I'm getting saccharine now, aren't I? Let's talk about Rishi Sunak. Big day tomorrow. We will have our budget special here on Tonight Live. And of course, brilliant coverage across the day, right from breakfast through to live coverage of the budget. So don't go anywhere, GB News. We're on telly, we're in-app. You cannot miss us, and soon we'll be on DAB+ as well. You can listen to us. Rishi Sunak has revealed his pre-match routine before delivering his budget speech tomorrow. The Chancellor will reportedly snack on a Twix bar and a can of Sprite, and that's beforehand. And then he has a can of Coke, and then he has his Coke. He says, I absolutely love Coke, and let's be honest, being a member of the Cabinet, that's hardly unusual. This revelation got me thinking about other celebrities and their pre-match rituals. So we thought we'd play a game with my panel to match the snack to the celeb, and it's a game that we've called Amused or Amuse-Bouche. There you go, nicely done. So here we go. We're going to show you several celebrities. So let's start with Adele. Now, what is her favourite emergency snack? Is it A, herbal tea, B, a small plate of assorted, freshly made, individually wrapped sandwiches, or pad thai with Singapore fried rice? Sam, what do you reckon? Do you like Adele?
I do like Adele. I think I like her personality more than her music, even though she's amazing and I've seen her live, but it's just a bit dreary for me.
Oh, OK.
Herbal tea.
You're going herbal tea?
I can't see her eating anything other way.
OK, well, let's have a look at the answer. It's a sandwich.
Oh.
That's right, individually wrapped sandwiches. Although I wonder, Dawn, whether she's had fewer of those sandwiches recently, given her weight loss.
Yeah, amazing.
Any idea how she did it? Do we know how she lost the weight?
Well, she says she was watching what she ate and exercising more. She became addicted to exercise during lockdown.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
for her. She looks stunning.
I think she did the fasting one, actually. I think she did
What, intermittent fasting?
Yeah, intermittent fasting.
I'm a big fan of that.
And exercising.
Your 8-hour eating window. So, what is it? Sort of skip breakfast, basically, and early dinner.
That's right.
Can't be too bad. Next up, how about this one for you, lovely, lovely Calvin? Keith Richards, what is his emergency snack? And, of course, he's the Rolling Stones legend. Is it a 6-pack of Heineken, roasted chicken and non-smelly cheese, or shepherd's pie?
Definitely a 6-pack of beer.
It's got to be, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Shepherd's pie.
Well, it's shepherd's pie, would
Is
you
it?
believe?
Oh, well done, Dawn.
He's old school.
You knew it?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
He's a British
Who
national
has a shepherd's
treasure.
pie before performing?
Speaking of national treasures, Elton John. How does Elton like to pursue a last-minute snack? Does he go for English crumpets, a bottle of Waitrose Cloudy Lemonade? This one's for you. Who have got next? It's Dawn.
Me.
English crumpets, a bottle of Waitrose Cloudy Lemonade, or vegetarian hand rolls without rice or mayonnaise. Does Elton like a hand roll?
Well, he doesn't like a crumpet, that's for sure.
Only once, in the 80s. Can I remind all of you that this is a family show?
I'm going to go for a hand roll then. Because he doesn't like a hand roll.
Speak for yourself. Well, look, apparently you're in 11, so the world's your oyster for a hand roll. What's your answer?
A hand roll.
It's not. It's crumpets. That's right. Elton John travels with crumpets because he believes, and I think was told, and I think there is some truth in that they're quite slimming because they're very, very light.
They're very salty,
Pikelets
though.
are better than crumpets.
You what?
Prefer a pikelet.
What is a pikelet?
Pikelet.
It's a mini pancake.
It's like a it's like a crumpet, but about half as big.
Is that right? And has it still got the perforations at the top?
Yeah.
And it's called a
pikelet. Pikelet.
Pikelet. I've never heard of this. Have you heard of this?
I've never heard of that.
I used to eat them in Australia, actually, but they were more like mini pancakes.
And is a pikelet
mini American pancakes?
Oh,
they
I
do
see.
have the holes, so I do know what you mean there. But it's a flat top; you can't see the holes.
There is
at the
nothing
top.
like a toasted muffin, and you have a knob of butter on the top, and it melts into the holes.
Oh.
Is that good?
Say a word.
Stop.
Please. Her mind. The problem with Dawn, she's been in Fleet Street for decades, and she's lost to us. She's gone, and she's not coming back. Tony Watson, I think you're all 10 out of 10. Beautiful, Tony. That's
What a
too
lad.
kind. Oh, so I'm back to the rating of the attractiveness of my panel. We're still in the game. Who knew? Nicolas Cage next. Nicolas Cage. So, what's his emergency snack? Only eats fruit and vegetables that have fallen from trees. Only eats fish and fowl who mate with dignity. Or he only eats duck or ostrich eggs.
I'm just going to go with the third one.
Either way, he's very strange, isn't he?
That's very
Yes.
strange.
And ostrich eggs are massive as well. They're like this big.
How does a fish mate with dignity? Just asking.
Let me tell you that they're friends for a few months.
Right.
Yeah. There's no action on the first
no
day.
kissing on the first day. Okay.
No. And then what happens is they rub scales.
Ooh, sexy.
The fins come together.
Right.
And they go from blue-blooded to red-blooded very quickly.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
I've run out of fish metaphors. Well, let me tell you, the answer is fish, because the wonderful actor Nicolas Cage only eats fish and fowl who mate with dignity.
What?
There you go.
That doesn't make any
Proof
sense.
Proof if you needed that he might be a great actor, but possibly slightly bonkers. But we love him for it, don't we? So before the end of the show, why has TikTok annoyed Calvin? We will reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass, plus more of your brutally honest emails. See you in 2. At least the trains run on time. Welcome back to Tonight Live. And we've got a really busy show. It's our budget special tomorrow, 9 o'clock. Don't be late. We're lovely to have your company. And also, of course, throughout the day, amazing coverage. I'm so proud of my colleagues here at GB News. Party conferences, I think, were amazing. But you wait for tomorrow's coverage because we have pushed the boat out, and it will be lovely to have your company from first thing in the morning with breakfast right through to me tomorrow night in for the boss, Dan Wootton, at 9 p.m. It's time now to reveal our Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. And with me to reveal theirs, my superstar panel, Dawn Neeson, Calvin Robinson and Sam Dowler. A couple of emails before we get to those. Steve says, I like English muffin, but only on America. Do you know what that means?
No.
But I can't imagine I'd enjoy an American muffin, I've got to say. Lawrence, I've missed handshakes as I live my life with handshakes. You can tell a lot about a person from a handshake.
You can.
And that isn't that the point, Calvin?
Oh, there's nothing worse than a wet handshake,
Wet
isn't
handshake.
it? When someone's really limp.
The other one is when they grip too early in your hand, so they take the fingers
awful,
rather than fleshy parts.
Or when it's too strong and they're trying to exert some kind of masculinity.
Little man syndrome, isn't it?
Yes.
More
That's
numbers.
everyone.
I wasn't looking at you.
Basically, I think we should do this every night now. It's poll ratings from my audience.
Oh, gosh.
Yvonne, 20 for Calvin, 10 for each of the rest of you.
Love you, Yvonne.
You're in there. Let me just say.
How is your mum these days?
Yeah. Or your agent. Calvin, Yvonne, Calvin. There we are.
What has this become?
Calvin 20. Oh, I like this one. This is from Barbara, good friend of the show. Barbara, Calvin 20 couldn't give a toss about the rest of you.
Oh, thanks, Babs.
Oh.
It's the Calvin show.
Yes.
I like Barbara.
Barbara's lovely.
Barbara's nailed it. Dawn 10. Oh, my goodness. That's, well, very attracted to you, apparently, but I won't go into too much detail. Calvin 6.5.
I've gone up half, thank you.
I get an 8.
That half is very important.
Oh, dear. Sam.
Oh.
Do you want the good news or the bad news?
I think they're both bad news.
No, you get an 8.
Oh.
But then when you open your mouth, it goes down to 3.
It's been said before.
Danny,
That's what you're opening your mouth for, love. Sorry.
There we are. Well, look, fantastic stuff. And I want to thank all of my panel for allowing themselves to be judged so harshly tonight. And you've all demonstrated what brilliant sports you are. And I think our viewers really appreciate that. So now, look, let's end that nonsense. Let's get to your Greatest Britons and Union Jackass. Faye, where shall I start? Dawn, your Union Jackass.
OK, my Union Jackass.
Oh, no, I've got it wrong. See, I'm still learning.
I can do it the other way around if you want. I'm easy, very flexible.
No way. I've just got I've got numbers bouncing around in my head now. Your Greatest Briton.
My Greatest Briton. My Greatest Briton is going to be Trevor Phillips. He has compiled a report into the woke madness that is currently going on in our museums and our art galleries, saying that we have to stop it. You know, we can't rewrite history. We might not like what happened in the past, but getting rid of statues and...
I took my son to the Science Museum, which is a great museum, and we were next to a remarkable early engine, and there was a note next to it about colonialism. And he's like, oh, what does that mean? And we're reading that, and I've just got to tell you, it was a downer. You know, because this this museum is a celebration of great engineering and innovation. And it's like, you know what, don't get too proud of your country and the achievements that it's seen. It's just, I don't know. I just think it's like a grey cloud hanging over all of us.
In any case, he's going to help museums fight back in a PC battle. Good for him.
Yeah, it's like we're training ourselves up to hate this country.
He's a bit of a mentor of mine. I think he's a great man because there are people trying to rewrite our history and he's fighting back against it.
And by the way, the place to have the context of stuff like engineering and, you know, our colonial past is at school, in a history lesson, at university, but not, I don't think, in a museum where you're there to focus on an amazing engine, which was a great innovation, which changed the world. But there you go. Look, I better get off my hobby horse. This isn't my bit. Calvin, your Greatest Briton
is David Davis MP, because he's spoken out about a lot of things this week. He spoke out against YouTube for blocking Novara Media. He spoke out against them for blocking himself. He did a video about vaccine passports and being against them, and for a member of Parliament to be taken down off YouTube is quite something. And he also spoke out against Whitehall for he wanted to request data on how they polled information to make decisions around the pandemic, and that Whitehall refused him, so he spoke out against that. So he's been quite a freedom fighter this week.
Definitely, and he's been very honest about COVID as well, honest in his views. What do you think, Sam, your Greatest Briton?
Has to be the Queen. She is surely the greatest Briton of all time. She's 95. She's been in hospital, and she's still back on the Zoom. And there are so many in this country who be like, "Oh, I've been in hospital. I can't possibly get on a Zoom." But she's there. She's got a smile on her face. Of course, she's not going to COP26, but again, she's going to appear via Zoom or via.
And by the way, how great does she look on Zoom?
She looks great. I mean, you know, how many other 95-year-olds it'd be this? All this.
Yeah, in the wrong place.
Hello.
You're on mute.
Switch the camera
on. She's a hero in my book now and always.
She was wearing a lemon dress and she had a winning smile. She had her lippy on and she is just so graceful. So there you go. Agree with that. Hard act to follow. Great shout, Sam. How about your Union Jackass? Lovely Dawn.
My Union Jackass is someone that we have mentioned quite excessively already, and that is Joanna Lumley. This is an interview in the Radio Times where she has come out that we need to bring back rationing, and she also lectures us all us plebs, obviously. We all need to think much harder before jumping on a plane for that weekend in Malaga. Love, none of us are jumping on planes to go to Malaga for the weekend. Most of us can't afford it for a start. This is a woman that's travelled extensively around the world, and she is now urging us all to stay home and travel in this country the very week before her TV programme starts about travelling in this country.
It's, I must say, a very shocking hypocrisy. Do check out the monologue on Twitter. It's up now, and I'm afraid I'm boiling with rage about it. My anger is not confected. Dreadful hypocrisy. Just a few seconds to go. So, Calvin, your Union Jackass.
So I'm dubious about using the CCP's technology, but I put a video up on TikTok of me on GBNews saying that only women get pregnant. I thought that was a fact. They suspended my video and said it was hate speech. So when did facts become hate?
Absolutely disgraceful. Well, thank God you're here on GB News, and you always will be, Calvin.
And not pregnant.
And finally, your union Jackass, Sam.
The couples that were on breastfeeding my boyfriend yesterday on Channel 4 documentary.
Sorry?
Adults who adult women who breastfeed their partners on OnlyFans, where else, of course, but things weren't working quite how they wanted. So
degenerate.
Each to their own. It's Mark. Calvin is spot on. Everyone calls them crumpets, but they are picklets. And I'll make him an honorary Brummy one soon. See you tomorrow at 9.